It is an honor for us to be here. Please join me in thanking Chancellor Kulkarni and his staff for their warm hospitality. We look forward to a report from the Chancellor later in this meeting. I'm pleased to welcome our new trustees, Lynn Dietrich, Michael Hoschel, Jay Paterno, and Kevin Steele. We look forward to having you as colleagues and are grateful for the service and commitment that you will be providing us. While we welcome our new colleagues, I want to remind everyone that today is the last meeting for Trustee Goldstein. Allie, I know I speak for our colleagues in thanking you for your perspectives, energy, genuineness, and with you've approached your important role. It's been a pleasure serving with you. Please be sure to see Tom or Ann at the end of the meeting to receive a token of appreciation for your generosity of service and time. And Allie, we all wish you well in your academic career. In May, we welcomed our new faculty senate officers and newly elected student leaders. The staff advisory council leaders working with the board this year will be Council Chair Jean Marie Jacob, who will serve on the Committee on Outreach, Development, and Community Relations, and immediate past co-chair John Ely, who will be participating on the Committee on Academic Affairs and Student Life. And I also want to welcome Steve Wagman, President of the Penn State Alumni Association, to his first board meeting. I am pleased that the university's 2016-17 Administrative Fellows are with us today. Sari Iqbal, Associate Professor of Political Science, spent his fellowship year with Nick Jones. Clarabelle Lynn, Marketing Director for Penn State's World Campus, spent the first half of her year with Craig Weiderman, and the second half with David Gray. And Felisa Preciodo, Clinical Professor of Supply Chain Management, was under the mentorship of Madeline Hayes. I hope all of you found your experience to be rewarding and one of personal and professional growth. Thank you for sharing your reflections on your experiences yesterday with the Committee on Academic Affairs and Student Life. We appreciate having many friends from Penn State Harrisburg with us today, including James Talahely, Chair of Penn State Harrisburg Board of Advisors. If you could please stand and be acknowledged, please. I'd like to take a moment to extend our appreciation to Susan Basso, Vice President for Human Resources. She is attending her last board meeting before joining Ohio State. That's actually hard for me to get those words out. As a Senior Vice President for Talent, Culture, and Human Resources on September 5th. Susan's been at Penn State for 7 years and has led the university's human resources process transformation. Susan, we do wish you the best. Will you please come up to the podium and receive a token of our appreciation?
I wasn't expecting this. I just want to say thank you all very much. I've appreciated my time at Penn State. I have loved my work here. I have loved working with my colleagues, and I'm looking forward to my new chapter in my career. And I will always have a special place in my heart for Penn State, and I hope if you're all ever in Columbus that you will look me up. Thank you very much.
I also want to recognize another individual who's with us today for her final board meeting, Holly Brown. Holly joined the board in 2013 as assuming a new role on July 31st in Development and Alumni Relations. Among Holly's significant accomplishments has been implementing and leading the process enhancements to add additional structure to the agricultural delegate election. Holly, I know you enjoy many activities and pursuits, including hiking and walking, so if you could please join me for a moment at the podium so I can give you a token of our appreciation from Penn State's Elm Collection that you can use when you're out and about. Holly?
Thank you. I don't have much to say, but thank you to the board for job security the last 4 years. You've kept us busy, and I'm happy to be staying in the Penn State family, so I hope to see any of you around campus. Thanks.
Finally, I wish to thank Trustees Detweiler, Olsey, and Rakovich for agreeing to serve on the Greek Life Response Team Advisory Group. I appreciate President Barron and the administration, including trustee representation on this important group. Please note that the board met this morning in executive session to discuss various privileged matters. We have a full agenda before us, so let's proceed with today's business. Can we start with the roll call, please?
Barron? Here. Brown? Here. Capretto? Casey? Cotner?
Here.
Gambley?
Here.
Dandria?
Here.
Detweiler? Here. Dietrich?
Here.
Duran? Here. Dunn?
Here.
Benza?
Here.
Goldstein? Hahn? Harpster?
Here.
Hartzler? Koschel?
Here.
Hoffman?
Here.
Jubelier?
Here.
Kleppinger?
Here.
Lubert?
Here.
Lebrano?
Present.
Mosser? McCumbee?
Here.
Oldsey? Paterno?
Here.
Pope? Here. Utz? Rakowicz?
Here.
Redding?
Here.
Rivera? Rivera? Schneider?
Here.
Schuyler?
Here.
Steele?
Here.
Tribeck?
Here.
Weinstein?
Here.
Wolf? Shipley?
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 5th meeting, please? Second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 2nd meeting, please? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now going to turn to election of officers for the Board of Chair and Vice Chair. At this time, I'd like to ask Tom Poole, Vice President for Administration and Secretary of the Board, to take the podium.
Thank you, Chairman Lubert. As Secretary of the Board of Trustees and in accordance with today's annual meeting, I will be conducting the election of officers. On May 17, Betsy Huber, then Chair of the Committee on Governance and Long-Range Planning, provided all trustees with a process and timeline for announcing candidates for Chair and Vice Chair. Trustees Capretto and Dambley expressed their candidacy for Chair, and for the position of Vice Chair, Trustee Schuyler presented his candidacy. After making their interests known, each candidate submitted a biographical sketch and vision statement, and those materials were distributed to all members of the board. Yesterday, each candidate was provided an opportunity to make a brief presentation to the board with respect to their candidacy. This process does not preclude nominations from the floor. At this time, I would like to call for nominations for Chair of the Board, asking that the first nominator limit his or her remarks to a minute or so, and that the individual providing the second do so without remarks. Are there any nominations for Chair of the Board of Trustees?
Secretary.
I would like to make. Trustee Weinstein.
Thank you, Chair. It is my honor to nominate Dr. Bob Capretto as Penn State Board of Trustee Chairman. Bob has dedicated his life to a plethora of public and private, profit and not-for-profit institutions, elementary schools, high schools, universities, healthcare, and the arts. Bob has a proven physically responsible leadership record to organizations and to its members. We as a board are extremely lucky to have two candidates with impeccable track records. Penn State is a gold standard, as we all know, of higher education. And this election is between two candidates, each emulating this highest quality benchmark. It is our responsibility to select a candidate who maximizes our shared vision. Bob has the skills to maximize the best in our administrators, the best in our academic body at the undergraduate, graduate, and research levels, the best in our alumni, and the best from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, all ultimately resulting in the very best for our students. Again, I'm proud to nominate Bob, who raises the bar of our Penn State pride to the highest possible level. Thank you.
Trustee Weinstein has placed the name of Bob Capretto in nomination for the chair of the board. Is there a second?
I'm pleased to second the nomination of Dr. Capretto for chair of the Penn State Board of Trustees.
Let the record show that Trustee Pope has seconded Mr. Capretto's nomination. Are there other nominations? Trustee Potts.
Thank you. It is my pleasure and honor to nominate Mark Dambley to the office of Chair of the Board of Trustees. Penn State is a dynamic and significant enterprise facing many challenges and opportunities. Mark's passion, leadership skills, and experience position him perfectly to lead this board at this time as we work in partnership with President Barron and the administration to successfully guide this amazing institution. Mark has demonstrated through his commitment to numerous board leadership and Penn State service roles his energy and passion for all things Penn State. The list is long, but includes chairing the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee, the Penn State Health Enterprise Strategic Council, and serving on the Blue and White Vision Council. And I even note that he has a 100% attendance record at full board meetings. In addition to his many other assignments, Mark has worked in full partnership with Chair Lubert this past year as vice chair. He knows fully the awesome responsibility he's taking on and has the ability to dedicate the time necessary for this role. In my experience, as a leader, Mark listens, he speaks frankly, is decisive, and demonstrates excellent judgment. I trust that he will work with each trustee in a spirit of respect, transparency, and willingness to listen to all points of view. I know Mark to be a gentleman of excellent character, and I ask my colleagues to join me in supporting Mark for chair of this board. Thank you.
Trustee Potts has placed into nomination the name of Mr. Dambley for chair of the board. Is there a second?
Mr. Pohl, I'd like to second that nomination. It's my honor to do so. Thank you.
Let the record show Trustee Hoffman seconds the nomination. Are there any additional nominations for the position of chair of the Board of Trustees coming from the floor? Seeing none, as convener, I will declare the nominations closed. I will now call for nominations for vice chair, asking that the first nominator limit his or her remarks to 1 minute, and that the individual providing a second do so without remarks. Are there any nominations for vice chair of the Board of Trustees? Trustee Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. I nominate Trustee Matt Schuyler for the position of Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees. Trustee Schuyler is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Hilton Worldwide, and in his second term as an at-large member of the Board of Trustees. All of us are familiar with Trustee Schuyler's strengths as a thoughtful and engaged trustee, and I believe we are all similarly confident in the high level of talent and commitment he will bring to this position. Over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work with Trustee Schuyler in particular in his role as the chair of the Retreat Planning Committee. He listens before he speaks, he thinks before he acts, and he solicits the views of others before he draws his own conclusions. That being said, he is decisive, and he comes pretty darn close to an age-old surgeon's motto of sometimes wrong, never in doubt. I know that Trustee Schuyler has expressed to many of us how humbled he is to be considered for this position. I would like to simply say how grateful I believe we all are for his willingness to take on this role. In a room full of such talented people, it is rare that a single person is singled out among them. This is one such rare moment. Matt, I believe I speak for all of us when I say thank you, and I look forward to serving under your leadership. Thank you.
Mr. Schuyler has been nominated for Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees. Is there a second?
It's my great pleasure and honor to second the nomination of Matt Schuyler for Vice Chair of this Board.
Thank you. Let the record show that Trustee Duran offered a second to that nomination. Are there additional nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Seeing none, as convener, I will declare that the nominations for Vice Chair of the Board are closed. At this time, we would like to open the floor, not for comments or second and third and fourth nominating speeches, but we do want to give trustees an opportunity to ask any questions they might have of the three individuals who have offered their leadership. Trustee Lebrano.
Thank you. I've had a chance to speak to Trustee Dambley before the meeting, so that seemingly untoward question is far less untoward. But Mark, as you know, recent media reports have resulted in contact by alumni all over the country, all 9 of us. And so I just ask for you to address what we've read in the last few days.
Thanks, Anthony, for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to respond. I've been looking to a forum to respond to the questions that were raised in social media. When I was young, I made some mistakes. I deeply regret those actions. It was certainly a low point in my life, which is of record. I've learned from those mistakes, and I've moved on to live a very productive life, both personally and professionally. I was fortunate to be elected as vice chair by my peers last year, and it's my hope that based on my experience and your experience with me and my presentation yesterday that I made to the group, that I've earned your support. The university has many important things to focus on moving forward. Many issues, and I am committed to addressing those for the students of this university, and I stand ready to serve. Thank you for the question, Anthony.
Additional questions for Mr. Dambley? Any questions for Mrs. Capretto or Schuyler? Trustee Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. I have a question for Trustee Dambley. And this question, Mark, is to follow up on some of the things you told us about your intentions if you were to be elected chair. You spoke about your interest in expanding the role of the executive committee, getting those folks more engaged, making that more of a meaningful role. And I would like to hear some more from you about that, and I'll just be straightforward with you about where my concerns lie so that you can address those directly. The executive committee, as described in our bylaws, is for the purpose of the executive committee shall be to transact all necessary business as may arise in the intervals between regular meetings of the Board of Trustees, it being understood that action by the executive committee would not be expected to be taken except in extraordinary circumstances. So, consistent with most good governance, the executive committee exists primarily to take care of urgent business when it's not possible to assemble the full board in time to take action on something that's very pressing and urgent. Now, I can completely understand the temptation of a chair to want to have a smaller kind of advisory body, especially on a board of this size where it's difficult to get input from so many people. But my concern about that is that it may create essentially a board within the board, where we have a group of people who are insiders, who are close to the chair, who are advising the chair and informed by the chair. And the danger of that is particularly great, given that the chair has the power to appoint nearly everyone who would be on that executive committee. So some of the criticism and concern within our board and towards our board involves the need for more inclusiveness, which again is difficult because the board is so large. But my concern about expanding the role of the executive committee is that that's going to take us in another direction, and we will have some trustees who are the chosen trustees, and then everyone else is going to be out in the second tier. So I'd appreciate hearing more about your thoughts on that.
That's a long question, Alice, so I'll try to remember all of it and respond appropriately. Certainly, it would be my intention to work very closely with Matt, if elected as chair, to certainly abide by the bylaws and not go outside the boundaries of those. I think I also put forth in my presentation yesterday, I think a pretty robust platform on transparency, where if elected, I offered to have biweekly phone calls, open calls with all trustees, a biweekly communication to all trustees, and a willingness to increase transparency. I think that it's a two-way street in terms of being on the executive committee, and I think Ira spoke about that last year, and we've had some successes, and I'd like to build on the momentum and successes that we've had. It would be my intention to use them as a sounding board. I think it is a large board, and having served as vice chair and worked very closely with Ira in that capacity, it's a lot of work to be able to inform everybody, communicate with folks, and have the conversations that you need to have. I additionally pledge to establish a representative from each of the constituencies elected to have phone calls with and communications with. So I think I put out a platform that increases transparency immensely. I think certainly I'm going to work within the confines of the standing orders and bylaws for the behavior of the executive committee, but I do feel strongly that as chair, I will be decisive. I will make decisions in concert, if elected, with Matt. But I do want to have other people's opinions, and I want to listen, and I want to especially engage and involve the students more robustly.
Additional questions for Mr. Dambly? Any questions for Mr. Capretto or Mr. Schuyler? Trustee Durant.
Hi there. This question is for Mark. Yeah, Mark, at the last election for vice chair and chair, and also at our retreat, there was discussion and indications that leadership positions on the committees would be broadened to include the various categories of trustees. And I'm wondering if that's something you, as chair, you would still intend to follow through on.
As you know, Chairman Lupert and myself felt it would be appropriate to wait until the next leadership team was in place to establish new committee chairs. I will certainly, that is my intention, but as I suggested in Alice's question, it's a two-way street. And I think you need to earn leadership positions. I think that you'll see a different makeup, both in chairmanships, vice chairmanships, and subcommittees. But I'm going to work closely with Matt if elected, and I think Matt's a great person to have as a sounding board in constructing those committees. But it's a two-way street, but I think you'll see some changes if elected chair. Yep.
Additional questions for Trustee Dambly or for Trustees Capretto or Schuyler? Trustee Tribex.
Yes. Thank you. This would be a question both for Trustee Dambly and then Trustee Capretto. I have been on this board for 2 years, and there continues to be what I view as a divide on the board, real or perceived. That divide needs to be bridged. We need to stop infighting. We need to start disagreeing rationally, reasonably, and professionally, but somehow the trust that does not exist currently needs to be repaired. And I'd ask both of the candidates for chair what, with some specificity, you would plan to do to repair that trust and to bridge the divide that has seemingly existed for far too long. Thank you.
Mr. Capretto, you want to take that first?
You want me to take that first?
Please. Yes, please.
So, first of all, as chair, I work for the board. I'm very inclusive, and I want to be inclusive. For example, if this meeting were held in Pittsburgh, I would invite every trustee to my club for a dinner and socialize. I would not exclude anyone. And at times, we have a tendency to exclude people because we disagree with them. Look, I can disagree with you, but that doesn't mean I don't have a conversation. So maybe it's more simple than that, but being inclusive and talking to somebody and not at somebody is going to be extremely important going forward.
I actually think we've made some progress. In the last couple of meetings, I've really felt a better vibe. I've felt that we've had significantly more, I'm sorry, I can't look right at you, Rob, significantly more open dialogue. I think we saw, as we met in June, and yesterday I witnessed at the Governance Committee, and I think it's, again, a two-way street. You have my commitment to extend an olive branch, if that's the appropriate phraseology, and I think you'll see that in the construct of the committee structure. But there needs to be, I think, appropriate dialogue. We can agree, we can disagree, but I think it needs to be appropriate. And I don't think there's an easy answer, Rob. So I don't think I say I'm going to do this and that's going to bring us all together. I got to tell you, you know, as Ira said when he ran, he'd like to have fun again. You know, so would I. With some enjoyable times, and like I said, I think that the last couple of meetings, I've seen an improvement. I'd like to build on that momentum. You have my pledge to attempt to do that, but you also have my commitment that if folks don't choose to participate constructively, then that's going to be on them, and it's not going to be on me.
We have time for perhaps one last question, if anyone has a question for any of the three candidates. Seeing none, let's move on. In addition to my role as the incumbent secretary of the board, and as noted in item 3 of your agenda, the remaining incumbent officers of the board are Associate Secretary Janine Andrews, Treasurer David Gray, Assistant Treasurer Susan Whittemer, Assistant Secretary Carmela Mulroy Degenhart, Assistant Secretary Crystal Straw, and Assistant Secretary Kim Wright. The two new Assistant Treasurers on the ballot are Patricia Battaglia, Manager of Treasury Operations, and Kimberly Fisher, Assistant Controller. Our bylaws require the use of a written ballot, and so in a moment you will receive from the board staff 2 ballots. The first ballot will be for the position of chair and vice chair, and it requires you to write the name of your selection on the ballot. Appropriate nominations and seconds were made for trustees Capretto and Dambly for the office of chair, and for vice chair the candidate is trustee Schuyler. I would ask for the benefit of our tellers that you please write legibly on the ballots. We all have nameplates, so we should be able to spell one another's names correctly. Also, please, if you intend to abstain from voting, please write abstain on the ballot. The other ballot will list the remaining officers. For that ballot, space is provided next to each name. Please indicate your preference by placing a check mark next to each name you approve. I will now ask the board staff to distribute the ballots. Once completed and collected by the board staff, I have asked Vice President Zach Moore, Vice President for Government and Community Relations, and Tracy Houston, Interim Vice President for Outreach, to serve as the tellers. I'll ask that they provide me the results in a sealed envelope, and I will then report out the election results later in the meeting. For those participating in this meeting via telephone, Trustee Ryan McCumbee is on the phone. Please disconnect from your current dial-in and use the instructions previously provided to you to relay your vote. Once you have done that, you may dial back into the meeting. Would the ballots please be distributed?
President Barron, do you think I could call you up while they're voting? Do you think that's okay, and get started since we had a little extra questions and things? Thank you. At this time, President Barron will give his report to the board.
Okay, I thought I would just tell a good news story today and focus on an update of our philanthropic campaign. Am I in charge here? Good. That's of the remote. Okay, so philanthropic campaigns at Penn State. The first one, the campaign for Penn State, 1986 to 1990, $300 million, a Grand Destiny campaign, 7-year campaign, $1.37 billion. For the future, the campaign for Penn State students, again, 7.5-year campaign, $2.188 billion. And the tradition continues. We have launched a Greater Penn State for 21st Century Excellence. There is a little bit of pleasure in this name because approximately 100 years ago, the first request for money, $1 million to help create a Greater Penn State, was announced by this university. So there's a little throwback to history. Our strategy is very different, as many of you know, from a typical campaign. A typical campaign runs 7.5 years, 8 years. Many of them are going to 10 years, and the objective is to raise as much money, as large a sum as we possibly can. This campaign is thematic. It is focused on our strategic plan and accomplishing the goals of our strategic plan. If we go through all of the work to say this is the direction this university is headed, then surely that should be the focus of how we raise dollars, those areas which we think will have the biggest impact on the university. A strategic plan is 5 years, and so this campaign is 5 years. So if necessary, if you just like to look at the big number, you would say that number is smaller, but in fact the number in terms of annual giving will need to be significantly different. It is designed, in fact, to create a sustained annual level of giving significantly above the last campaign. The last 3 campaigns, the totals raised, not the initial goals, are listed here for a Grand Destiny and for the future. And you will see that our objective is to try to have at least $320 million, above $300 million every year of this campaign, and therefore set a new benchmark for Penn State. So that right now presents a goal of an annual fundraising. You also see that fundraising at Penn State is becoming more mature from the shape of that graph. And as you start to have a more and more professional fundraising effort, you begin to see that curve demonstrate that you are trying to bring a higher and higher dollar amount each year to the campaign. Our themes focus truly on how to make a great university even greater. The first theme, which we call Open Doors, is designed quite simply to change the financial equation for our students. We know that the number one control on the cost of a degree is the time to a degree. We also know that a need-based student takes longer to graduate because they've been working too many hours, take a smaller load, don't do as well, drop classes more frequently because of the workload that they're undergoing. And so they graduate at a much lower level. This Open Doors campaign says the objective here, not just a scholarship, the objective here is change the pace to graduation. So today we will vote on tuition, and if you imagine a $200 a semester tuition increase, and then compare that with going a 5th year that costs you $17,000 plus housing, and you do not have a job, so you're also paying for housing and food, that is the most profound increase in the cost of an education. Open Doors is designed to address that point specifically. The second major theme is to create transformative experiences for our students. We know that a student that is engaged in worthwhile activities in and out of the classroom are healthier, have a better peer group, they tend to get better grades, they build a better resume, and they tend to get great jobs. Everyone here who saw that race car can instantly picture how important transformative experiences are for a student. Because here was the faculty member working with the students outside of the classroom, and you listened to those students tell you the jobs that they were getting and how quickly they were being snapped up by the automotive industry because of that experience. This second part of this campaign is exactly focused on the theme of working on that race car as an out-of-classroom, engaged experience that allows students to become more successful. And the third major theme is impact the world. And this is part of our land-grant mission to do things that are important to society. Energy security, food security, water security, human health, economic development. Those are missions for Penn State University, and this part of the capital campaign is focused on those themes. It is interesting because we were something of a leader in doing this thematic campaign, and we have two other Big Ten schools who have just announced campaigns that are copying exactly the model that Penn State has done. Well, the year one results exceeded $300 million, 304.6 in new commitments. This is the third best year in Penn State's history. The other two times were a $100+ million gift from Terry and Kim Pagula, which had a way of making that a very good year. And the very last year of the For the Future campaign, with everybody pulling out the stops to do as best as they could. We actually have a projection this year that's been announced as a likely target of $357 million, which would be an all-time record for Penn State. There's also $202.8 million in receipts, and one of the things that is probably the most profound statement about what Penn State is all about and how our alumni feel about this institution is that this year included 50,000+ additional donors, and in particular, a 6% increase in alumni donors. Now, our development team was just at the Big Ten development meeting, and many, many schools were complaining that their alumni giving had become flat. And here Penn State stands out with a growth of 6% of our alumni in our alumni giving. This tells me that not only are our alumni continue in that great fashion to be committed to this university, but the notion of these themes and doing things that are truly impactful for our students through Open Doors and transformative experiences and doing things that impact the world is capturing their attention. This gives you a sense of where we are with 20% of the time elapsed. With Open Doors, with a $500 million goal at almost 25% of target, and transformative experiences with a goal of $225 million at 27% of target, and impact the world with a goal of $475 million at 25% of target. There are additional categories in here beyond these themes, because I think you can well imagine a gift category that wouldn't fit perfectly in these categories, and we don't want to just place them in one. We want it to be consistent. So we have, in progress towards this campaign, actually $350.4 million at this point. So this is a very fine start. And there were some highlights. Don Belisario, perfect example of how important Open Doors is, not being able to afford his education, becoming a veteran, coming back and knocking on the door and saying, "Will you take me back?" And we did. And he borrowed $600 to finish his education. And he says, when some young man or woman says, "I was going to drop out of school I wasn't going to make it. Well, I know that's what that's like because I was there, and I'm proud and glad that I could afford to do this. And this is a $30 million gift, naming the College of Communications. Another nice highlight for the year, 2016-17 Philanthropists of the Year, Jack and Jeanette McWhirter, honored June 2nd on the campus for generously sharing their time, talents, and resources, and only their most recent gift this year was $10 million to support the graduate program in the Department of Chemical Engineering. They are well worth honoring for their tremendous commitments. Another highlight is when our Alumni Association takes a look at this university and says, we too, as an association, can contribute to Penn State University. And this year, they pledged $1.5 million in scholarship support for Penn State students. That commitment to open doors and making sure that all of those students that come to Penn State from all those different backgrounds, 20% of the University Park students, 40% of the Commonwealth campus students, first in their family to go to college. Here is our Alumni Association pledging to make sure those students, regardless of background, are successful at Penn State. A number of these programs are very different than what you see in a typical campaign. And so to incentivize this, we have created new matching programs. Open Door Scholarship Matching Program, First-Time Donor Endowed Scholarship Matching Program, Graduate Scholarship Matching Program, and a component here for leadership gifts. And I'd like to explain this just briefly. Each and every one of you, if I say we need a scholarship dollar, might give dollars for a scholarship. But if you sit there and say, what we'd like to do is have your first summer, before you start in the fall, have 6 credits, a summer job on campus and a scholarship, and your second summer, 12 credits, a summer job and a scholarship, which we now demonstrate has a profound impact on grade point, math readiness, number of credits that they have by the time they enter their second fall, and 7% increased retention rate that bodes incredibly well for graduation rates. These people are on their way to graduate on time, if not early. When I explain that, it takes a minute. When I tell people that in many, many high schools across this state, inner city and rural, that we give you points for taking college-ready classes. And if you come to Penn State, you can take those points and transfer that into scholarship dollars, because then we know you come in the door ready to take the courses that you need for your major and graduate. That takes a little bit of time to explain. So we've created a matching program to incentivize people to focus on these scholarships that truly help people graduate and graduate with less debt by graduating in a shorter amount of time. Faculty Endowment Challenge for Early Career Professorship. This is an incredibly important way to attract all-stars. And you know that we have launched what appears to be an incredibly successful program in economic development at this university. With lunch boxes, Harrisburg is again a perfect example of the success of these students. So if you happen to have gone on the tour and you saw the young man with his drums, he now has 40 plus credits on labels for music for his drums. And he has won prizes for what he has done, all associated with the efforts at this campus to promote entrepreneurship among students. Also, this is something that is different. So we have matching programs to help colleges and campuses create entrepreneurship programs, and we have matching programs that allow people to name our launch boxes, which are growing across this state, because we need to make sure they're endowed and are a permanent part of economic development. To give you an idea of how important we think those open door scholarships are, we will match those scholarships given by donors at a rate of $2 from the university for every $1 from the donor, and we will place that into our foundation assets in perpetuity. It's a wonderful opportunity. We're going to do this for 1 year till June 30th, 2018, so people start to see how profoundly significant these scholarships are. the minimum gift is also lower for that match of $30,000. And at that particular point, I would like to have a special thank you to Ira Lubert, our chair, for contributing $500,000 for an open door scholarship at Penn State Abington, which is a part of its very recent $5 million gift to our university. Ira, thank you so much for doing that. And, you know, it doesn't hurt that the day after the year ends, in comes a $4.9 million gift. This one from CSL Behring, a global biopharmaceutical company for a fermentation lab. So we are off to a great start. I think that we're going to see that this notion of a thematic campaign, which is focused on the strategies for the university to be truly great, will hopefully be truly great, and that will attract your interest and hopefully your dollars. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'm happy to take questions if you have time. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. I'll now call on Provost Jones to provide his report to the board. Nick?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's nice to be with you all for our summer Board of Trustees meeting, which is traditionally held, as you know, at one of Penn State's Commonwealth campuses. I'm delighted this year that the summer meeting is being held at Penn State Harrisburg, a thriving campus about which you will hear even more from Chancellor Kulkarni immediately after my remarks. Today I'll be talking a bit about our campuses and how they carry out our mission of teaching, research, and service, both individually and collaboratively. Before delivering my official report, however, I would like to take a moment to welcome two new Commonwealth campus chancellors, one who started in her role a few weeks ago and another who will begin serving in a few days. On June 1st, Jackie Edmondson, who had been Penn State's Associate Vice President and Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, assumed the role of Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer at our Greater Allegheny campus. Jackie brings tremendous knowledge of the university to this position, along with her experience as an accomplished leader in program and curriculum development and general education. Also, effective August 1st, Darcy Medica, Director of Academic Affairs at Penn State Schuylkill, will begin serving as the campus's interim chancellor. She will assume the leadership role following the appointment of Kelly Austin, current chancellor, who was named Associate Vice President for Administration in the Office of the Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses. Darcy will serve in the interim role while a nationwide search for Kelly's replacement progresses. We are fortunate to have professionals at Penn State who are highly prepared for and eager to step up and serve in such vital roles. Please join me now in congratulating Jackie, Darcy, and Kelly and thanking them for their service to our university. As a public research university that boasts a large and diverse community of students, faculty, and staff, Penn State is proud to serve the Commonwealth across its 24 physical campuses, as well as through our online world campus. As we often say, Penn State is one university geographically distributed. From this map, you can see the accuracy of that description. You undoubtedly have heard of, and maybe even read, the Charles Dickens novel, A Tale of Two Cities, while Penn State is a tale of 24 campuses. And there is no book that you can pick up or download to read the complete story, because it is one that continues to evolve and grow. I have mentioned before the many benefits of Penn State's unique structure, one of which is that it provides for an accessible Penn State education with choices to fit most personal situations, preferences, and challenges. Our campuses, which vary in size and program portfolios, advance the university's mission and are key parts of their broader communities. They enable opportunities and outcomes that other institutions cannot. Dr. Madeline Haynes, our Vice President for Commonwealth Campuses and Executive Chancellor, continues to demonstrate exceptional leadership in these areas, and we are grateful for her commitment and dedication to the campus's success. Thank you, Madeline. Ultimately, Penn State's structure is intrinsic to our role as the Commonwealth's land-grant institution, and we continue to take pride in and maximize the benefits of our unified multi-campus approach. And so, in preparing for this week's meeting here in Harrisburg, I started thinking more about Penn State's campuses and the results they engender. When we titled our university-wide strategic plan, Our Commitment to Impact, implicit was the acknowledgement that individuals at all of our campuses are making impacts through teaching, research, and service. As many of you know, I visit each campus at least once during each academic year, typically during the spring semester. I meet with our chancellors, faculty, staff, and students to engage with them directly and learn more about the interests and needs of our key stakeholders beyond our administrative hub in University Park. And let me tell you, I learn a lot from these visits. What is especially interesting is how different some of our campuses are, from their unique histories to how they operate today. And yet, no matter how contrasting their individual missions, programs, or demographics may be, the campuses are clearly part of one united Penn State. I would love to reveal this to you by telling you a tale of 24 campuses, but I know that might get just a tad lengthy. So instead, I will share with you a briefer tale about only 3 of them: Harrisburg, where we are today, and Carlisle and Hershey, nearby locations that are home to the Dickinson Law and the College of Medicine, respectively. All of them are unique in many ways, but are all also are vital pieces of what makes us the Pennsylvania State University. I know Chancellor Kulkarni will have much more to say about Penn State Harrisburg, but suffice it to say, the story of this campus is one of transformation, evolution, and growth. In 1996, the university spent $1 to buy the north complex of the Olmsted Air Force Base, which was being decommissioned, to build a campus here. Pennsylvania Governor William Scranton and University President Eric Walker saw many benefits in the plan, among them that it would create new jobs and lessen the negative impact of the base closure on the local economy. Penn State Harrisburg, then called the Capital College, was established as a graduate school and upper division center for students who could transfer from other Penn State campuses and other institutions as juniors or seniors. It originally enrolled 183 students, including 18 undergraduates, in just a few majors, and employed 8 faculty members. Fast forward 50 years, today Penn State Harrisburg enrolls more than 5,000 students and offers more than 65 associate, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree programs. Its proximity to the state capital and to a vibrant hub of commerce and industry affords students many opportunities for involvement in community service, internships, fellowships, and mentoring programs, all experience that extend learning well beyond the classroom. Further testament to the strength of a Penn State Harrisburg education is the success of its alumni, now numbering more than 40,000. As Chancellor of Penn State Harrisburg since 2010, Mukund Kulkarni is an exceptional leader who continues to advance the mission of this campus. Thank you, Mukund. Founded in 1834, the Dickinson School of Law was the oldest law school in Pennsylvania and the 5th oldest in the country. Over the years, its graduates have included the nation's finest attorneys, judges, government and corporate leaders, and legal educators. Dickinson Law's historic home underwent a thorough renovation and modernization program designed to bring together students, staff, and faculty on a daily basis. Dickinson Law also completed significant upgrades to its clinic building, located only 1 block from the courthouse in downtown Carlisle. The clinic building serves as the law office from which its students provide service to members of the community. The school's merger with Penn State in 1997 expanded its reputation, network, and joint degree programs, further solidifying Dickinson Law's legacy as an innovative leader in experiential education. Incidentally, Dickinson Law recently became a separately accredited school, distinguishing Penn State nationally as one of the few universities with not 1, but 2 law schools. Both have a staunch commitment to excellence and serve students with complementary but sometimes diverse aspirations. This development is yet another example of Penn State evolving to better serve the citizens of the Commonwealth. Dean Gary Gilden remains a driving force behind the exciting changes and evolutions at Dickinson Law. In 1963, the Hershey Foundation offered $50 million to Penn State to establish a medical school in Hershey. With this grant and $21.3 million from the U.S. Public Health Service, the university built a medical school, research center, and teaching hospital, what is now the Penn State Health Milton S. Hershey Medical Center. The university broke ground in 1966, and the Penn State College of Medicine opened its doors to students in 1967. The medical center accepted its first patients in 1970. Since 1970, the campus has grown from 318 acres to 550 acres. Many additions have been made to the academic and patient care facilities, reflecting the steady increase in patient demand for services and the need to expand research and teaching programs. Beyond the many degree programs now offered in the College of Medicine, students from the College of Nursing rotate through the Medical Center for clinical courses, and students from other Penn State health-related programs also come to Hershey for their clinical experiences. As Dean of the College of Medicine, Chief Executive Officer of Penn State Health, and Senior Vice President for Health Affairs, Craig Hillemeyer is elevating Penn State's impact in Hershey and across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Craig, for all that you do. So clearly, in Harrisburg, Carlisle, and Hershey, we have members of the Penn State family who are very different in myriad ways, and yet they are still related. They're part of the whole. When we say, "We are Penn State," all three get to shout it just as loudly and proudly. But how do these seemingly disparate pieces fit together? For starters, they are united by our tripartite mission of teaching, research, and service. They also share the university's 6 core institutional values: integrity, respect, responsibility, discovery, excellence, and community. Ultimately, all three are part of an institutional fabric that covers the Commonwealth and represents a huge economic engine for the communities that these campuses call home. Beyond all of that, however, are the intersections, the key ways in which these campuses and their key stakeholders support each other and work together to foster important outcomes. The close proximity of Penn State, Harrisburg, the College of Medicine, and Dickinson Law enables unique opportunities for collaboration, including joint educational programs and interdisciplinary studies and research. For example, Dickinson Law and Penn State Harrisburg offer cooperative programs leading to the degrees of Juris Doctor, JD, to be granted by Dickinson Law, and either the Master of Business Administration or Master of Public Administration granted by Penn State Harrisburg. These concurrent degree opportunities enable students to earn both a law degree and a professional degree in business. And that's not all. The College of Medicine and Penn State Harrisburg also offer cooperative programs leading to the degrees of Doctor of Philosophy to be granted by the College of Medicine and the Master of Business Administration or the Master of Science in Information Systems granted by Penn State Harrisburg. These concurrent degree opportunities enable students to complete a doctorate in biomedical sciences and a professional master's degree in business administration. These degree program offerings across the Capital Region campuses reveal the power of academic collaboration to benefit students with broad career aspirations. The region is also a hub for talent and innovation with ample resources in business, medicine, law, and many other fields. Invent Penn State, our Commonwealth-wide initiative to spur economic development, job creation, and student career success, is an excellent example of this. In February of 2016, President Barron joined representatives from the College of Medicine, Dickinson Law, Penn State Harrisburg, and this region's business community to celebrate the awarding of a $50,000 seed grant from Invent Penn State. It was one of only 6 seed grants awarded then, but it was unique in that it involved these 3 Penn State entities, all contributing to innovation and entrepreneurship in the Capital Region. With the awarding of 4 more grants last month, we now have a total of 17 innovation hubs, all built upon partnerships with local community organizations and local industry to meet the needs of their unique business startup ecosystems. These include hubs here in Harrisburg and our nearby campuses in York and Mont Alto. Another example worth noting, when we were holding our strategic planning forums this last spring, Penn State Harrisburg offered to host the forum related to enhancing health, one of the plan's 5 thematic priorities. We could have held that event in Hershey, but Penn State Harrisburg and Chancellor Kulkarni saw it as an opportunity for broad engagement about the topics of personal and community health in the Commonwealth. These collaborative endeavors and others show how our campuses, seemingly as different as those in Harrisburg, Carlisle, and Hershey, among others, can join forces as part of one Penn State to make great things happen. Our Commonwealth campuses are a large and dynamic part of the university, serving more than 31,000 students who are vital to our integrated structure. They are making a difference in their communities and helping the university to deliver on the ambitious goals articulated in our strategic plan. They are also working collaboratively to have even bigger impacts. We will continue to leverage our unique structure and tell our ever-evolving tale of 24 campuses to meet our obligations regarding educational access and affordability and fulfill Penn State's land-grant mission. Thank you for your time today. Maybe there's time for a couple of questions before I cede the podium. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. I'm pleased that Chancellor Kulkarni will be providing an informational report for us today. Dr. Kulkarni joined Penn State Harrisburg as a faculty member in 1985 and holds the rank of Professor of Finance. Prior to being named Chancellor, he held various administrative positions at the campus, including Director of the School of Business Administration and Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. He earned bachelor's and master's degrees in India, an MBA from Marshall University, and a doctorate from the University of Kentucky. Please join me in welcoming Chancellor Kulkarni to the podium. Please.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Penn State Harrisburg. Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. We are very pleased to host you on our campus this year as we conclude the celebration of our 50th anniversary. The last time the trustees were here, we were celebrating another milestone, opening of our new library. but that was 17 years ago. Needless to say, a lot has changed in 50 years, and especially in the last 17 years. To paraphrase Pro Jones, it is the tale of our campus that I hope to narrate to you today. This story is an exciting one, for it is about growth and transformation. It was accomplished with collaboration with other campuses and colleges, and with entities throughout this region, and with the work and dedication of our faculty and staff. And throughout this time, we received great support from the university leadership. Capitol Campus, as it was known first, opened in 1966 on the site of the former Air Force Base. There were 183 students, 18 undergraduates, and 165 graduate students. Unique for its time, the campus was a graduate and upper division center offering a handful of programs for juniors and seniors who transferred from Penn State campuses and other institutions. Another unique feature of the college was its emphasis on providing an interdisciplinary education. This remains a hallmark even today. Now, talking about the modern times, how has the college grown since you were here 17 years back? It is during this time period that Penn State Harrisburg has truly begun to realize its full potential, its transformation into a place of intellectual engagement and as a vital economic engine. In that time, Penn State Harrisburg has had only two chancellors, Madeline Haynes and yours truly. I thought I would say that. The breadth of our academic programs grew steadily as the campus matured. A major shift in scope occurred in year 2003-04, when we began to offer the first 2 years of 4-year study, initially in select undergraduate majors. Today we are comprehensive college, offering more than 65 degree programs from the associate to doctoral levels. These include collaborative efforts, as Pro Jones just mentioned, 4 joint graduate degree programs with the College of Medicine and Dickinson Law. But we also have 2 undergraduate programs in partnership with the York and Mount Alto campuses. Similarly, our robust World Campus portfolio is developed in collaboration with other Penn State colleges. We are the principal providers of 9 degree programs. In many of these, we partner with several university colleges and campuses. I will just name a few, not all. Smill College of Business, the colleges of Engineering, Agriculture, IST, Penn State Erie, Penn State Great Valley, and few others. As you can see, this is one more example of what Pro Jones outlined in his presentation. There may be many campuses and colleges, but at the core, we are but one university. The quality of offerings remains paramount. This is evidenced by the number of accreditations held by college. In fact, all of our professional degrees are nationally accredited. We have come quite a long way from our original enrollment of 183 students. Last fall, our total enrollment reached 5,046 students, representing 15 years of uninterrupted growth. Every year we are bigger than the previous year. International enrollment now tops 700 students from more than 45 countries. Ours has become a destination campus. More and more students are selecting Penn State Harrisburg as their top choice. Each year, the Freshman Evaluation Index, a measure of caliber of students enrolling, is getting higher every year. But even equally important, we boast a diverse student body. the campus community as a whole embraces a welcoming and inclusive environment. This diversity enhances the educational experience for all students. Let me also highlight quickly a few other characteristics of our student body that have changed since the trustees last visited. Our student population today is largely composed of undergraduate students, a significant shift in recent years. Similarly, the majority of students now with us are full-time. Through careful management of enrollment growth, we have been able to provide access to higher education to an increasing number of students. By partnering with World Campus to deliver more programs online, we are making educational options available to more people. Flexible scheduling, offering an array of classes during the day and evening, online and in the classroom, also aids students who often are juggling a degree program with other life commitments. We are doing our part to make Penn State education more affordable. Each year, number of students that we can help is growing. We are very fortunate to have many friends of the college who generously support scholarships for our students. Most recently, we successfully closed the strategic 50 for 50th scholarship campaign with commitments totaling over $3 million last year. This effort was well received by alumni, friends, and corporate supporters as we work to secure resources for more than 50 additional students, 55 students actually. Providing employment opportunities on campus is another way we can help students to balance the need to work part-time while attending college. Over the past 5 years, the number of students able to take advantage of employment opportunities on campus has increased by 90%. Student engagement remains a priority, and the opportunities for students grow each year. Philanthropy aids this ability to enhance our students' experiences inside and outside the classroom. Great emphasis is placed in this college on career-enhancing opportunities for students to learn and develop. The list of such opportunities is extensive. Research, capstone projects, study tours, international exchanges, regional and national academic competitions, internships, and so on. I hope you were able to experience many of our students' research projects during the campus tour this morning. The college also offers more than 75 clubs and organizations. We also offer a robust honors program, actually 2 honors programs, for students who are highly motivated to achieve academic excellence. The 2 programs are the Capital College Honors Program and the university's Schreier Honors College Program. And participation in those programs is growing. Penn State Harrisburg reintroduced intercollegiate athletics on campus in 2005. Today, our 17 teams compete at the NCAA Division III level in the Strong Capital Athletic Conference, which covers schools from Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. Many of our student athletes have been recognized with postseason honors. Last academic year, 2 of our student athletes competed at the national level in the NCAA Division III championships. Ashley Williams competed in the indoor track and field championship, and Cameron Yon participated in the national outdoor championships. The college also offers numerous intramural and club sports. The college has built a reputation of academic excellence and service to students on the expertise of our faculty and staff. The expertise of our faculty in particular is the basis for one of college's greatest contributions to the region, intellectual capital. Last academic year, our faculty authored over 400 journal articles and scholarly paper presentations, 48 creative works, and 13 books. This intellectual capital is the foundation for our outreach to business and industry, government and community organizations, and drives our ability to serve as an economic engine. Numerous research centers and institutes are housed on campus. Each has a specific mission, and each represents an important resource for the Commonwealth. The most recent addition to this list is our Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Provost Jones just mentioned that. We are proud to have been among the first campuses to receive seed funding through Dr. Barron's Invent Penn State initiative to create this center. Our effort is somewhat unique in the sense we are joined in collaboration with Penn State's College of Medicine, our neighbor, and Dickinson Law. We are pleased to be able to extend the Invent Penn State goals within the region in this way. And this is the perfect time and way for us to take the next step in our evolution as a significant economic development driver in central Pennsylvania. One of the easiest way to see, very literally, the transformation that has taken place is to take a walk around campus. I know it's too hard. But as enrollment keeps growing, we have tried to enhance and expand existing buildings. The newly built Student Enrichment Center has brought all student support services in one place. Penn State Harrisburg growth has also spurred development in the community around the campus. Here in red, you can see private and government projects being developed around the campus. Pay attention to the lowest right-hand corner, the perfect circle that you see. And that is where the new Middletown Amtrak train station is being built by PennDOT. The new station project will include a pedestrian bridge connecting the station to the campus. The increase in students coming to Penn State Harrisburg was one of the key reasons, that's what we were told, in the decision to relocate the Middletown station across from the campus. There are clear signs that the public and private sectors recognize the economic importance of the campus to the region and its potential for the future. I must acknowledge the support that we receive from the local and county governments and the Commonwealth. We often say that our graduates are the greatest measure of the college's success each year. We graduate approximately 1,000 students. They join the ranks of our more than 40,000 alumni, going on to become engineers, teachers, nurses, business leaders, lawmakers, scientists, writers, and much, much more. So this is the story of our campus. It is about collaboration and cooperation to provide excellent education and to utilize its intellectual capital for the benefit of society. It is about people coming together and taking pride in doing their best to move this college forward and cherish the noble mission that we carry out every day. And this is a happy tale. But this story has no end, only a great promise for the future. Thank you so much for listening. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I again want to thank Penn State Harrisburg for welcoming our board with appreciation that planning for this is over a year in the making. Please be assured that Chancellor Kulkarni, that you and your colleagues have provided us with an amazing experience, and I hope in some small way we've added to the campus anniversary recognition. At this time, we'll move to the reports from the standing committees. We'll now proceed with the reports for any action items considered and voted on committee. The chair will include these reports in their report today. Let me now call on the committee Abe Harpster for the report on academic affairs. Abe.
Thank you. The committee met yesterday with a quorum present. we were joined by our newest committee members, John Ely, immediate past chair of the Staff Advisory Council, and Brianne Pragg, Vice President of the Graduate and Professional Student Association. John and Brianne, we look forward to your input during our committee meetings. Please note that Appendix 1 of the agenda provides informational items on undergraduate and graduate programs. Nick Jones updated us on administrative searches, appointments, Lion Path, Canvas, WorkLion, and the replacement of the IBIS financial program. We appreciated hearing from Damon Sims provide overviews about a reorganization of student affairs at University Park, the university's relationship to its fraternities and sororities, and increased staffing for counseling and psychological services. Rob Pangborn provided the committee with updates on summer and fall new student admissions, progress on implementing the general education integrative studies requirement, and the opening of the new Center for Financial Literacy and Wellness. Brianne Pragg, Vice President of GPSA, shared information from all the student government organizations, including initiatives for the 2017-2018 academic year. The committee took action to recommend to the board by unanimous vote the appointment of Dr. Lee R. Kump to become the Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Science effective July 21st, 2017. At this point, I'll turn to Nick for some remarks on this recommendation.
Thank you, Abe. I'm pleased to affirm the committee's recommendation to appoint Dr. Lee Kump to the position of Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences effective today, July 21st, 2017. Lee has served as the college's interim dean since June 1st. A professor and head of the Department of Geosciences, he is a former associate head of the department and was the associate director of the Earth and Evolution program at the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research. During his time at Penn State, he has led a variety of research projects with the Environmental Protection Agency and NASA, among others. For more than 30 years, Lee has been a dedicated educator who challenges students to strive for new levels of academic success. He has also conducted research that has informed our understanding of the world and advanced the mission of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. Throughout his career, Lee has been an advocate for the scientific study of the earth and environment and has focused his research on understanding the forces at work behind climate change throughout history. In 2014, Lee was elected as a Fellow of the American Geophysical Union. He also is a Fellow of the Geochemical Society, the European Association of Geochemistry, Geological Society of London, and the Geological Society of America. Lee earned his PhD in Marine Sciences from the University of South Florida and his bachelor's degree in Geophysical Sciences from the University of Chicago. On June 1st, former College Dean Bill Easterling began a 4-year appointment as the National Science Foundation's Director for the Directorate of Geosciences. Bill will remain a member of Penn State's faculty during his time with the NSF, and thanks to his leadership, we can bring in a new dean who will be able to build on his accomplishments. I am delighted to recommend someone of Lee's caliber to serve as dean. As a longtime Penn Stater, he will continue to excel and support the university's mission. In conjunction with the committee's vote, I unequivocally support his appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Next, the committee took action to recommend to the board by unanimous vote the appointment of Dr. Justin Schultz to become Dean of the College of Engineering, effective August 15th, 2017. Nick, could you please provide some remarks on this recommendation?
Thank you, Abe. I am pleased to affirm the committee's recommendation to appoint Dr. Justin Schwartz to the position of Dean of the College of Engineering effective August 15, 2017. Justin serves currently as the Kobe Distinguished Professor and Department Head of Material Science and Engineering at North Carolina State University. He previously was the Jack E. Crow Professor of Engineering and Senior Research Advisor to the Vice President for Research at Florida State University. Under Justin's leadership at North Carolina State, his department experienced significant growth in overall faculty numbers, tenure track additions, and successful retentions, as well as underrepresented faculty, which increased from 9.5% to 30%. He implemented effective hiring protocols to ensure interdisciplinary, cross-departmental interactions and a diverse, talented pool of candidates. He also launched mentoring programs and leadership development and research opportunities involving faculty at all ranks. Under his tenure, student programs in material science and engineering also grew, with graduate programs doubling and undergraduate programs tripling in size, with nearly a 20% increase in female undergraduates. He received North Carolina State University's Diversity Award in 2011, and he serves on the Women and Minority Engineering Program's National Advisory Board. He was named a 2014 Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, a 2015 Fellow of ASM International, the world's largest organization of metals-based research scientists, and a Fellow of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Justin earned his PhD in nuclear engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and his bachelor's degree from that field from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Amar El-Nashai, Dean of the College of Engineering since January 2014, is leaving Penn State to begin a new position at the University of Houston. The university is grateful for Amar's leadership, which has enabled us to bring in a new dean who will build on Amar's accomplishments and continue to meet the major challenges, changes, and opportunities that exist in engineering education. I am delighted to recommend somebody of Justin's caliber to serve as dean. He will advance Penn State's mission while maintaining a steadfast commitment to excellence. In conjunction with the committee's vote, I unequivocally support his appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. We are honored to be at Penn State Harrisburg during the time of its 50th anniversary, highlighting the remarkable efforts and accomplishments of Penn State Harrisburg. Our committee appreciated an informative presentation yesterday by Dr. Kukarni, members of the faculty, and the students. As mentioned in the chairman's opening remarks, the university's 3 administrative fellows are completing their year-long experience, and we benefited yesterday from learning more about their perspectives and experiences gained during the past year. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Abe, for your committee report. As Abe mentioned, there's 2 action items. I'd like to take them one at a time. The first is the appointment of the Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Science. We'll put that item on the screen. May I have a motion for approval? Second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. I'll now ask that the next item, appointment of the Dean of the College of Engineering, be projected. May I have a motion for approval? Second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'll now ask the committee chair, Walt Rakovich, to provide a report on the Committee of Audit and Risk. Walt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met yesterday with a quorum of members present. Our meeting began with the cell phone. No, excuse me. Our meeting began with the new review of the roles and responsibilities matrix, and as an informational item, the acknowledgement of the Code of Ethics, which both David Gray and Joe Donchez signed in their respective roles in their fiduciary responsibility of managing and protecting university assets. The committee received an IT update from Michael Cubitt, who did a phenomenal job. It's clear that there's a lot going on in the IT landscape, and we appreciate the focus on service and strategic alignment that Michael has brought to the university. We believe that that strategic focus will serve the university very well going forward. Dan Heiss briefed us on the internal audit follow-up report and open issue status as of June 30th, reviewed the annual internal audit plan, which was approved by the committee, and reviewed the internal audit department charter update, which was also approved. Don Cotner and Gary Langsdale provided us an update from the Risk Subcommittee, including acceptance of the University Risk Management Plan. As a reminder, while the university's risk management processes are designed to identify, evaluate, manage, and monitor the risks, the Risk Management Plan attempts to address any gaps that could exist in the implementation of those risk management processes. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Walt. I'll now turn to the Committee on Compensation. I'll ask Matt Schuyler for his report. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met yesterday with a quorum present. The duties and responsibilities contained within the operating guidelines for this committee include the President's annual performance and compensation review. Specifically, we are to recommend for Board of Trustees approval the President's goals and objectives, to evaluate at least once a year the President's performance in light of these established goals, to review peer compensation information, and based on this information, make recommendations with respect to the President's annual compensation. Susan Basso, the Vice President for Human Resources, discussed this process for performance review and how changes in compensation for the President and Tier 2 and Tier 2A executives would occur if appropriate. We also discussed the process for obtaining input from all board members on the President's performance and 2017-18 goals. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'm now going to turn to Rob Fenza for the report on the Committee on Finance, Business, and Capital Planning. Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quorum was present for the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee, which met yesterday. The committee approved the May 4th, 2017 minutes. There are a number of action items requiring a board vote today, and I'll report the committee's recommendation for each one of them. Multiple opportunities for briefings were provided to trustees through various opportunities to ensure each trustee had a comfortable level of information. That included 2 webinars, detailed information on the board portal, all supplemented with university administration making itself available to answer questions. And I'm sure fellow trustees, my fellow trustees, appreciate these opportunities, and I trust that anyone seeking such additional information took advantage of these multiple opportunities. The committee reviewed and approved items H and I of the Finance, Business, Capital Planning Committee consent agenda by unanimous vote. Items number 2, proposed naming of Penn State Worthington Scranton to Penn State Scranton. Item 3, proposed naming of the Natural Resources Learning Center to the Donald J. Combs Natural Resources Learning Center. Number 4, proposed naming of the library, the Mary M. and Bertle E. Lofstrom Library at Penn State Hazleton. Number 5, the proposed appointment of an architect for Petit Library renovations and courtyard infill at the University Park campus. The committee reviewed and approved items 2 through 5 unanimously. I'll now ask Dr. Barron to present item 6, consideration of proposed operating budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017, and then item 7, which is the proposed tuition and fees effective for fall 2017 semester. Thank you, Dr. Barron.
I am pleased to share Penn State's proposed 2017-18 operating budget and proposed tuition and fees effective fall semester 2017. Additional background and detail can be found in the information provided to you earlier this week, which I'll refer to throughout the presentation. Schedule 1 in tab D of the proposed 2017-18 operating budget and proposed tuition and fees effective fall 2017 summarizes the total institutional operating budget and the proposed changes for this fiscal year. Proposed budget changes for all Penn State's units except Penn State Health across general funds, restricted funds, and auxiliary enterprises total $95 million. In addition, changes totaling $156.7 million are proposed for Penn State Health. With the approval of this proposal, the total operating budget for Penn State will exceed $5.677 billion for the year began on July 1st. This pie chart represents the anticipated sources of Penn State revenue for 2017-18. Tuition fees provide 31% of operating revenue. The second year, hospital and clinical revenues exceed tuition and fees. Auxiliary enterprises and restricted funds activities are self-supporting and largely externally funded. They also provide reimbursement to the university for the general funds-based services that provide support for all units. The medical center also provides support for the College of Medicine. The focus of this proposal is a general funds budget, which is comprised of four main areas: educational and general, agricultural research and cooperative extension, the College of Medicine, and the Pennsylvania College of Technology. The general funds budget is supported by three sources of revenue: tuition and fees, which represent the significant majority and more than 79%, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania appropriation at 13.2%, and other smaller sources, primarily indirect cost recovery from grants, contracts, and income from the short-term investment of the university's operating cash, contributing the remaining 7.6%. As you know, the Commonwealth has not yet passed a non-preferred funding bill. However, the General Assembly has proposed a spending plan that includes level funding for Penn State's general support appropriation and medical assistance line items, a $500,000 increase for agricultural research and cooperative extension, and a $2 million increase for the Pennsylvania College of Technology. The breakdown of the total appropriation is shown here. It includes our general support line of $230.4 million, $22.1 million for Penn College, a total of $52.3 million for Ag Research and Extension, an estimate of $13.4 million for the Hershey Medical Center from state and federal medical assistance funds. This chart shows the appropriations since 2001, including this year's estimated total of $318.2 million. Here is the appropriation chart adjusted for CPI, which is the most conservative measure of inflation. Just so you know, if the appropriation kept pace with inflation, we would be able to decrease funding today by over $2,000. The next few slides focus on the educational and general budget, or E&G, which is a subset of the general funds budget. It is supported by the general support appropriation that stands at $230.4 million and is heavily dependent on tuition at more than 81% of the total. If Penn State receives level support this year, the percentage of the E&G budget provided by our state appropriation will be 10.8% of the total. Notably, that funding supports the cost of attendance for Pennsylvania resident students. Detailed planning for the 2017-18 operating budget began nearly a year in advance with the preparation of the budget plan and appropriation request that was submitted to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in September. Penn State requested a $25.3 million increase. This was based on our objective of having no tuition increase for any Pennsylvania resident undergraduate student, and to address our budget priorities and mandates. It was also based on the governor's promise to restore the appropriation cuts made in the 2011-12 budget year. When Governor Wolf presented his 2016-17 executive budget in February 2017, his plan called for level funding in Penn State's 2016-17 general support appropriation. As a result, Penn State adjusted the planning parameters for the 2016-17 operating budget to include the lower appropriation increase in the executive budget. Therefore, a proposed operating budget now incorporates level funding for the general support appropriation. The priorities that guided our 2017-18 budget planning were focused on getting to the lowest possible tuition increase and adding to the pool of institutional student aid for our neediest students. To achieve this goal while providing the necessary resources to address the cost increases associated with institutional priorities and mandates, we identified more than $21 million in expense reductions and reallocations. The proposed 2017-18 E&G budget includes a net increase of $60.4 million for a total E&G budget of $2 billion. This proposed operating budget balances the need to fund critical priorities and mandated cost increases while keeping base tuition increases low or at zero for our Pennsylvania undergraduate students. Cost increases for employee benefits, salaries, innovation, strategic plan initiatives, student aid, and facility needs, combined with targeted budget reductions, comprise the net increase of the E&G budget of $60.4 million. The proposed budget plan includes more than $21 million of internal budget reductions. The budget reductions are comprised of operating savings from new health care plan administrator and prescription drug savings, a combination of capping and reducing the subsidy provided to the World Campus and outreach, increasing the overhead tax on auxiliary enterprises, and reductions from capturing savings across central budgets that can be closed without a negative impact on operations. The largest expense change we face is the university's benefit program, which is projected to increase beyond the amounts already budgeted by $27.4 million. The cost for the employer share of health care for employees, graduate assistants, and fellows is projected to increase by $12.5 million. That's the equivalent of a 1% tuition increase. The university plans to budget an additional $14.8 million for mandatory employer retirement contributions, which are largely beyond our control. The employer contribution rate for the State Employees Retirement System, or SERS, for most of Penn State's members will increase from around 30% to almost 34.5% for 2017-18. Approximately one-third of Penn State's full-time employees are enrolled in SERS. The second largest cost change, $24.8 million, is for an adequate salary pool to help stay competitive with our peers. This increase will fund contractual amounts for the labor agreements that apply to Penn State's technical service employees and campus health professionals, centrally funded amounts for faculty promotions in the professional ranks, a 2% pool to provide merit-based and market salary adjustments for faculty and staff, and salary-related benefit costs. A very modest $9 million in funding is budgeted for innovation initiatives to advance the thematic priorities outlined in the 2016-2020 strategic plan. $5.7 million is earmarked to increase the recurring pool of need-based student aid and grants in aid. Additional $3.7 million is budgeted for programs supported by student fees. The fourth largest change is related to facilities. A total of $10.7 million is required to address facility maintenance needs. Included in this amount is $3.2 million for the maintenance and operations of new or newly renovated facilities scheduled to come online this year. $4.2 million is included to fund the utility cost associated with the new or newly renovated facilities, the loan amortizations for the West Campus steam plant, and energy savings projects. The E&G Capital Improvement Program was established to address the overwhelming need to provide modern laboratory and classroom space as a supplement to the capital funds received from the Commonwealth. These funds enable the university to incur debt for building construction and renovation. Extraordinary budget pressures, including the sharp appropriations reduction in 2011-12, prompted the university to delay any additional investments in the capital improvement program for 3 years. Last year, in order to keep the chemical and biomedical engineering project on schedule, $5 million was budgeted to support borrowing. In 2017-18, $3.4 million will be budgeted to support significant improvements to the College of Engineering areas and for renovations to the Henning building. These projects will occur very early in the next capital plan, and funding for related debt service needs to be in place before the design phase for these projects can begin. Penn State continues to face the challenge of financing the renovation and renewal of an aging physical plant. Ideally, additional recurring funds would be added to the $31.1 million budget to address these needs. To reduce the amount of new recurring funds that need to be identified for 2017-18, thereby keeping tuition increases lower, an allocation will be made available from non-recurring funding sources for the second year in a row. The sources to support the proposed 2017-18 operating budget are summarized in this slide. The proposed tuition rate increases are presented in more detail on a later slide and would provide $50.4 million. Additional income of $3.7 million would come from a combination of student fees and $6.3 million from a combination of an increase in indirect cost recovery, the continuation of the plan to gradually phase out the historical E&G appropriation transfer to the College of Medicine, and additional income available from growth in international fee income. As in recent years, targeted budget reductions and captured cost savings, strong enrollments, and addressing some needs with non-recurring sources make it possible to propose an aggregate 2.4% base tuition increase for Pennsylvania resident undergraduate students. This aggregate includes no tuition increases for Pennsylvania resident undergraduate students at 8 Commonwealth campuses. Pennsylvania resident tuition rates for lower division students at University Park will increase by 2.74%, or $232 per semester. Increases for Commonwealth campus resident lower division students will range from 0 at 8 campuses to $155 to $173 per semester at other campuses. This slide provides a summary of all of the lower division resident and non-resident tuition rate increase percentages and dollar amounts. Detailed tuition schedules are included in the material you received earlier in the week. Here are the publicly reported resident tuition increases at other major public research universities, including many of our Big Ten peers, all of whom have much higher levels of support from their states. Agricultural research and cooperative extension are also included in the general fund's budget, but unlike the educational and general component, these activities are not supplemented with tuition revenue. While welcome, the increase of $500,000 proposed by the Commonwealth does not fully fund the inflationary costs for salaries for the employees who carry out these critical activities, and a reduction in funding for program needs will be necessary. The Milton S. Hershey Medical Center and the College of Medicine project an overall budget of more than $2.4 billion. The final component of the general fund's budget is the Pennsylvania College of Technology, a wholly owned subsidiary of Penn State in Williamsport. The Board of Directors approved a 2017-18 budget plan on June 15th, prior to the finalization of the state appropriation, and therefore the approved budget did not include the appropriation increase of $2 million. The 2017-18 budget includes increases in general funds expense and income of $1.1 million and reductions in restricted funds and auxiliary enterprises that total $76,000 for a total operating budget of $152.8 million. This concludes the presentation of the 2017-18 proposed operating budget and tuition and fees effective fall semester 2017. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Barron. The committee had a similar presentation yesterday, and we reviewed and approved items 6 and 7 unanimously. And since there's a lot of numbers in this presentation, I'd like to offer the opportunity if there are any questions at this time. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barron. Item number 8, proposed amendment of a design-build team for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade at the University Park. Item number 9, proposed reauthorization to expend funds for the final plan revision approval for the West Campus steam plant modifications at University Park. Item number 10, proposed final plan approval and authorization to expend funds for the Panzer Stadium bleacher seating and enhancements at University Park. The committee reviewed and approved items 8, 9, and 10 unanimously. Item number 11 is the proposed acquisition of the Rydell property at the Abington campus, Abington Township, Pennsylvania. In reviewing the Rydell property yesterday, the gross square footage in the report was mistakenly stated at 39,612 square feet. The resolution reflects the correct number of 31,012 square feet, and that is a gross square feet. The change has no impact on the rentable net square feet for the building. The committee reviewed and approved the item unanimously. I'll now ask David Gray to provide an update on the proposed fiscal year 2018, 2019 to 2020, 2022 to 2023 capital plan. Thank you very much, Rob. So in the spirit of full disclosure, I have to tell you that this slide deck that I'm about to share with you this afternoon was authored by Ford Stryker, who I think labored on it right up until midnight on Friday, June the 30th. The slide deck is 45 slides long, which is also, I think, in keeping with Ford's thoroughness as a professional engineer. I, however, will endeavor to speed through a number of them quickly. I'm seeing nods of concurrence from some of the trustees. So let's dive right in. He did that on purpose. It's his legacy and his gift to us. So the presentation outline for this afternoon, brief introduction. Obviously, this is something that we shared with you starting back in the January retreat, and we've worked on it within the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee continuously since then, at the March meeting, at the May meeting, and really have gone through a lot of dialogue and successive iterations of the plan to the point where we have two alternate proposals to share with you this afternoon. And then the plan is to bring a final resolution for you to approve, including a debt resolution at the September meeting. So let's continue on. So here again, we discussed this with you in January. We've met, and now you see the plan laid out before you, the schedule. So again, looking at the two alternatives, one labeled Alternative A and the other Alternative B. Alternative A contemplates $4.7 billion in total university capital plan obligations in this new 5-year plan, $2.2 billion of which would require the authorization of debt. As we've discussed with you and with the committee, this would undoubtedly place some downward pressure on the university's AA1 credit rating with Moody's and AA with Standard & Poor's. That is something that we need to consider carefully, but by itself should not necessarily deter us from doing what is necessary to make sure that our facilities are kept in top-notch condition. Of that total amount of $4.7 billion, approximately $2.2 would be for education in general, and that assumes $750 million in debt for E&G facilities. That's where we're going to spend most of our time this afternoon, is actually talking about the education in general portion of the capital plan. The plan would also include Alternative A, $1.4 billion for Penn State Health and the College of Medicine, and $1.2 billion for our self-supporting units, our auxiliary and business service units, intercollegiate athletics, and the applied research laboratory. So this just quickly is a table that goes through the uses contemplated in Alternative A, and some of the terminology here I hope will be familiar to those of you who will recall the conversation from January and the subsequent committee conversations. A keep-up amount within E&G and the other funding categories, catch-up, new buildings and additions, capital leases and contingencies, infrastructure, IT, equipment, energy savings, and student-initiated fee projects. This then is where the sources would be drawn from, and you can see here the top line, the three items, E&G borrowing, self-supported borrowing, capital leases, and contingencies, all are the borrowing components in Alternative A. And if you go over to the far right-hand portion by the total, you can see that the total of those three items does sum to $2.2 billion. Again, the amount we would need to borrow to supply this plan with the necessary funding. And then you can see the other components. Another significant one, obviously, are drawn from various sources of reserves, unit reserves, energy savings, central reserves, as well as reserves from capital assessment that would come from necessary revenue increases to support the plan. Also, an important component is philanthropy. Commonwealth capital, we continue to expect to receive $40 million a year from the state in this plan, as we have going back all the way to 1995. And that amount, other than in the few years around the Great Recession, has been unwavering at the $40 million per year threshold. And then you can see the other components there that we intend to draw upon. Now, for a quick look at Alternative B, and you'll note we've used some green shading of the fonts to indicate the principal changes from Alternative A. So Alternative B would take us to an overall
funding threshold of $5 billion in total plan obligations, $2.4 billion in debt, which, again, if you'll recall, is $200 million more in debt allocation relative to Alternative A, and $2.3 billion overall would be spent on education in general in this. The impact on the E&G operating budget is $6.3 million higher than Alternative A. That's also something important for you to bear in mind. That total operating budget impact is something that we need to be very cognizant about because it is over and above the basic operational needs of the university, such as President Barron just described, for the upcoming fiscal year. Again, Penn State Health at $1.4 billion unchanged and $1.2 billion for self-supporting units. That does include an increase in funding for the Applied Research Laboratory to meet some of their pressing needs. Here again, the uses summary for Alternative B. I'm not going to go through them exhaustively. You have all these materials available to you on board effect, and I would encourage you, as you have opportunity subsequent to today, to take a look at these materials, and please feel free to contact me with any questions you might have in follow-up, because I know I'm trying to speed through a ton of information here, and it will take you some time to absorb it all. But again, please note the changes from Alternative A are noted in with green shading. This then is the sources summary, again highlighting the fact that it would require an increase in borrowing in debt issuance from $2.2 to $2.4 billion, and would also draw more heavily upon reserves because we would get additional funding, in fact $60 million more in educational reserves from the capital assessment. And also it contemplates $30 million more in private fundraising. So let's take a quick look again at the E&G component, reminding you about the campus renovation age profile. This is something that I think is very, very important. On the left-hand side, the left bar, stacked bar, is University Park and its facilities age profile, and on the right is the age profile of our Commonwealth campuses. And what this discloses is the simple fact that our facilities, particularly at University Park, are aging to the point where they need a lot of attention and a lot of funding. In fact, you know, you can see there, 65% of our square footage, our E&G square footage at University Park is now more than 25 years of age, and a healthy chunk of that is over 40 years of age. Total square footage that we're looking at University Park in the education in general category, 12.5 million gross square feet, 5.1 million at the Commonwealth campuses, for a total of 17.6 million gross square feet. Our backlog at University Park, our capital backlog, is just shy of $1.1 billion. Our backlog at the Commonwealth campus is just shy of $400 million. Current replacement value of these facilities is also quite substantial. At University Park, $5.8 billion. At the Commonwealth campus is $1.7 billion, and that's only for the component that is 25 years or less. And when you move it up to 40, then you hit another $3.6 billion at University Park and another $800 million at the Commonwealth campuses. So again, the cost of maintaining these facilities and keeping them in shape for 21st century science and teaching is just vitally important to us and costly. So one of the things we're going to want to discuss with you are allocation principles for these E&G projects. We're going to look at the ratio of keep up versus catch up for new buildings and additions, where we're suggesting a rough ratio of 67% to 33%. So you can see the heavy emphasis, much as it is with the current capital plan, will be on taking care of our existing portfolio of facilities and allocating relatively less to new construction or additions. We also are suggesting a ratio of system renewal versus whole building renewal projects of 25-75. So again, emphasizing a fair amount on whole building renewals. An example of that in the current capital plan would be what we've done with the Steidl building, which I think you all agree, if you've been through there, is quite impressive. This then would be, again, the overall five-year capital uses summary. You've seen this, so we're going to speed through this quickly. Let's look now at the allocation by use in education in general. So you can see here that a lot of this is going to catch up and keep up. Again, only 33% recommended to go to new buildings and additions. And this is how it breaks down in terms of total renewal versus major maintenance and new buildings and additions. And this just gives you another way of looking at it in terms of whole building versus system renewal on the right-hand side. And again, here is a summary of the uses for alternative B, again, driving up by a couple of $100 million the amount we would be able to spend for our E&G facilities. And this then is the same kind of breakdown for alternative B. You can see a little bit more that we're able to obviously commit given the additional resources that would be provided. So again, keep up versus catch up at 6733, renewal versus whole building 2575. We also have to be concerned about the balance between allocations at University Park relative to the Commonwealth campuses. That's something in the current plan was roughly at a 70-30 ratio, but we do need to consider, again, when we attach the Penn State brand to these Commonwealth campuses, the quality of those facilities is equally important, so we need to be really thoughtful about how much we drive out in support of the Commonwealth campuses. For new building and addition projects and whole building renewal projects, we would focus, our recommendation is that we focus on strong programs where investments are needed to maintain or regain prominence. So this is something where, in particular, we want to allocate a fair amount of money in the new plan to our engineering facilities at University Park. Obviously, it's our largest college by virtue of its enrollment, and one that I think is crucial for us to maintain its academic reputation and standing, and also to continue having it be very attractive to the very best faculty and the very best students. Also, programs or campuses with strategic importance. This is where I think we need to think carefully about where are our opportunities to grow, both programmatically or locationally, and to allocate our funding accordingly. For system renewal, we want to focus on those buildings where we have the most dire or worst conditions. And we want to balance our overall education in general capital resources in terms of the allocation. And also, the idea is to start off with a planned contingency of 10 to 15% to give us that margin for error and for changes as conditions warrant. So again, you'll recall this slide. On the left-hand side, this indicates our spending by year in the current capital plan that will end this coming June 30th. And you can see that the plan was heavily front-end loaded, and that it enabled us, in the early years at least, to actually move above the dotted blue line, which is the catch-up line. That's the line where we actually put a dent in the major maintenance backlog, the deferred maintenance backlog for these facilities. Here depicts the average. So on average, over the 5 years of this current plan, we've spent about $175 million per year. Now, if we look at what would the funding level in alternative A that we just shared with you do relative to the keep-up and the catch-up lines, and also relative to the current plan, and you will see that it holds steady pretty much at about $200 million in spending per fiscal year, and doesn't quite get us to the point where we're actually putting a dent in the backlog. Alternative B, on the other hand, that additional $200 million makes a substantial difference and does get us across the years up to that catch-up line where we're actually able to, move positively against that backlog. Here are the backlog projections, looking first at the current capital plan, and you can see that we did have a very positive impact in making progress with respect to that backlog. Alternative A would, as I said before, keep us pretty much steady state, and actually you'll see a drift upwards as we move into the outer years. So we would actually be losing ground a little bit with the new capital plan at the funding level contemplated in Alternative A. Alternative B, on the other hand, begins, as I said, to move us ever so slightly in a positive direction, where the backlog, certainly adjusted for inflation, is not getting worse, it's actually getting marginally better. Current capital plan backlog projections for the Commonwealth campuses, what you were just looking at was for University Park. And you can see Alternative A would actually enable us to keep up reasonably well. And with Alternative B, we could actually put a very noticeable dent in the backlog of projects at the Commonwealth campuses. At this point, I'm going to ask Andy Reisinger, our University Budget Officer, to come forward and walk through the E&G budget implications for both Alternatives A and B, because this is, I think, for the trustees where the rubber will meet the road with hard decisions about what the choices are with respect to operating budget impact. Andy.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. There are two slides included here to show Alternatives A and B in context with estimates for other typical cost drivers and income sources. You can see here salaries are projected to increase at 2%, obviously, which we would like to improve upon. Healthcare benefits are shown increasing at an 8% trend rate annually, although in the cost savings amount, there is a goal to reduce that to 5%. Retirement contributions are shown as leveling off, consistent with the latest estimates we have from the SCRS folks, but those are strictly just estimates. Again, a few more of our typical cost drivers that we have in there: innovation, student aid, insurance, and so a few other things. I'm going to go quickly here because a lot of you have seen these before. Income sources not including tuition are shown. These include indirect cost recovery, investment income, continuing to reduce the appropriation transfer to the College of Medicine, and other smaller sources. At the bottom, you can see the balance that remains that would need to be supported by tuition increases or other income sources, or by finding additional cost savings. Again, these are only long-range projections meant to put the capital plan into context with our other annual needs. So here you see, this is Alternative A. You can see in green the three amounts that would be related to capital investments in each of those years, and you can follow to the bottom and see the net that would need to be funded. Just for reference, as was said earlier, a 1% tuition increase equates to about $12.5 million a year right now. So that $48, $52, $58 million would have to be funded from some source or from cost reductions elsewhere. So this is Alternative A. Here's Alternative B, and you can see the net at the bottom bumps up a little bit to reflect the change on the first green line.
Yes. Hold tight.
Is that realistic to have a projection of healthcare at only 8%?
Actually, we're very optimistic about that, Ted. We will enter into a contract with a new plan administrator effective January 1 of 2018. We're in final negotiations now, but by all indications, that will contribute greatly to our ability to manage down the cost escalation trend. Their administrative costs will be lower than our current situation, and we will be able to actually ratchet down the cost of the actual claims that we pay as a self-insured employer. So I'm actually quite hopeful that we'll be able to bend that cost curve for health care benefits substantially. And I would point out that's both to the benefit of the university's budget as well as to the out-of-pocket costs that are absorbed by our employees. So I am optimistic about that.
Thank you.
Yes, Mary Lee.
So David, relative to the retirement line, so we saw a 47% increase from May till now in the estimate, and year over year, it's 19%, and this shows it being flat. Can you give me your risk-adjusted view on that?
Yeah, the current projections that we have from SERS do show it leveling out, but they also showed this year not increasing nearly as much as it did, and then we had our May surprise. So maybe this is optimistic. It probably is for the retirement projections, but it's the best information we have available. It's, you know, these are all really just estimates, and the further you go out, obviously, the less accuracy there is. So.
Before we move on, one thing, Mary Lee, I would point out with respect to the SERS contribution rate projections. We do know that the state has made substantial changes to the plan for new employees that will take effect in January of 2019. Over a period of time, those will work favorably to pull down the pressure on employer contribution rates. How quickly that will take shape probably depends on how rapidly the Commonwealth's workforce turns over, among other factors that are not within our control. But the fact is they have made a statutory change. It is an important change, and it will eventually work to apply downward pressure to those employer contribution rates.
David, just to clarify Mary Lee's question, though, but I don't think it's flat, though. This means that it's $4 million up per year.
That's an annual increase. That is the delta from year to year.
Right. But also one other question. So this is I see the debt service piece of it. We're debt service financing half of this, right?
Yes.
Where's the other half coming from, and what impact does that have on the budget?
If you're looking at the plan in its totality, we're going to be drawing heavily from capital reserves that are both unit-based reserves as well as funds that we have centrally, and we're going to be building a reserve again, basing on tuition rate increases to support the plan. We would plan to set aside some of those funds from that capital into a capital assessment fund. So we would have reserves there that we would build up. We've largely depleted, and I'm looking to Joe here, by the end of the current plan next June, we will have largely depleted our capital reserves. So it's very important, in addition to supplying a source of fuel for debt service, that we also build back up those reserve funds.
I'm confused, but I'll ask you afterward.
Okay. I'm going to move quickly through the self-supporting units, again, because they are budgeting, from a budgeting standpoint, they're tubs on their own bottom. They're responsible for their own debt service maintenance and capital program. But Penn State Health, as you all know, will have some serious needs for expansion of their facilities over the coming 5 years. So we're providing in the plan roughly a little over $1.4 billion for auxiliary and business services in furtherance of the plans that you've already approved to renovate the housing stock at University Park, the continuation of the renovations in East Halls, and then moving on at the end of that 5-year period into Pollock Halls. We will be supplying, a substantial amount of effort there. Intercollegiate Athletics obviously has ambitious plans of its own to overhaul its facilities. And again, the Applied Research Laboratory, largely funded through grants that they're responsible for maintaining. So again, a good amount of activity here with the self-supporting units, and then the sources that they plan to draw upon to supply the funds for that activity. So debt considerations are something that are very important. Again, as we directly contrast the two alternatives that we have in front of you, E&G and Alternative A would require $750 million of debt over that 5-year period. Alternative B would raise that by $153 million to $903. The amounts that you see there for Penn State Health and the College of Medicine for debt, as well as A&BS, Intercollegiate Athletics, remain the same. Applied Research Lab would go up potentially in Alternative B. Capital leases, virtually the same, and a little bit less for allocation for contingencies in Alternative B. And again, overall, the $200 million difference in debt contemplated between the two alternatives. Again, you can see here the apportionment of that debt by the different funding sources, alternative A and therefore alternative B. So we thought it was important to at least, as food for thought, put some draft resolutions in front of you. The language that, again, we could bring to you in September in terms of the capital plan, dependent upon your guidance as to what your preference is between alternative A and B. So we've outlined some of the considerations for you here. Again, we're looking at, this would be a first for you. We have not asked in the past for the board to formally approve the capital plan itself. We've only brought authorizations to expend funds for the individual projects. So this is a substantial shift in direction, but we think an appropriate change to come to the board to ask you to approve the contours of the overall spending plan for capital, given in particular its magnitude. And so again, you can see it, some of the parameters laid out here before you. One of the things that we're proposing specifically is that, if I go backwards here, that we would actually ask you, in that bottom bullet, we would ask you to approve changes to the extent that they exceed 10% in any of the individual components of the plan. So that there would, and we would also bring our progress with the plan back to you on an annual basis. So there would be a checkpoint at every step along the way, and to the extent that we would exceed 10% or diminish by 10% in any of those component units, we would come back to you for additional authorization. And again, you can see here the uses or commitments for schedule that we're calling Schedule 1 that would be attached to the resolution in the case of alternative A, sources for alternative A, and then this would be the contrasting resolution that we would put in front of you if you would prefer the higher threshold contemplated by alternative B. But again, all the other parameters other than the spending level would remain the same, and the 10% change approval requirement would remain the same for both alternatives. And again, just laying out the absolute uses and commitments that would be attached to the resolution. That's it. I know I threw a lot at you in a relatively short period of time, but again, happy to address any questions you might have about the plan. And also, it would be very helpful to us at this stage to get some feedback from you about your appetite or preference for alternative A relative to alternative B. The comment that I shared earlier about the downward pressure on our credit rating, obviously, if it applies to alternative A, then by definition it's also going to apply to alternative B with a higher level of debt. But again, I think the important point to consider is what is our fiduciary responsibility, your fiduciary responsibility as trustees, to see to the maintenance and upkeep of these very important facilities to our educational program.
So, just a question, David. So, on Plan A and Plan B, what would be the percentage tuition increase we would need to, assuming no other sources of income incur, just for this capital plan, and for how many years? Okay. Just remind me, it was 35 slides, and it's been a long couple of days. I'm
asking my colleague Andy to come back up because I think he has that right at his fingertips.
Does he? Thank you. And while Andy's coming up, I think, I don't know if I speak for everybody, but certainly we've been in meetings for 2 days plus, so certainly ask any questions and provide any direction. But I think, Rob, I'm sure you're planning on having some webinars. I think it's really important that we get all the information and we fully vet this. This is a big, big decision in September, and we ought to dedicate the time necessary to look at it.
Mark, when Andy answers the question, I do want to address David.
In alternative A, there was a little more than $24 million contemplated for debt service. So with tuition at about $12.5 million for 1%, that's around about a 2% increase each of the 5 years. That's just for the capital plan needs. Then we have, obviously, the usual needs that we have for salary increases and benefits and that kind of thing. So, you know, where we're coming to you this year at a 2.45% increase without any debt service. The debt service would add on. Yeah, it's about a 2% increase on alternative A and probably closer to a 3% increase in alternative B.
That would only be for 5 years? Correct.
That's correct. But it doesn't go away after. You know, you don't drop back off at the end of 5 years because the debt service continues.
The debt service runs out for 30 years. Full 30 year implementation.
That's correct. Yeah. Each year. Right.
Each year, ratcheting up. Thank you, Andy.
I got a question. David.
Where are you?
Over here. Number one, you talk about the stock and the average age of the physical plant. If a building was built in 1985, renovated in 2007, completely, just except the bones of the outside, how do you age that?
Jay, I'm sorry.
Okay, if a building was built in 1985, you're
Right.
talking about the average age of the physical plant.
Yes.
And renovated in 2007. Are you counting that as 85 or 2007?
So when we renovate a building, like for instance, when we renovated Steitel, and literally took it down to the bare bones and built it up from whole cloth, that actually resets the clock to zero.
Okay.
That is considered a brand new facility once you've done a whole building renovation.
Okay, second question is, I look at that and I see $150 million in new debt in athletics. How much of that is based on the assumption that the Big Ten network is going to be in the same number of homes that it is now, with cord cutting going on for ESPN and with the Big Ten network? Are we assuming that we're going to stay, that the levels of media rights that we're going to get, or is there a risk there?
I think the assumption is that the media rights income or revenue stream that we're currently realizing will be there for us well into the future. So there would be risk there to the extent that any future contracts would diminish that income stream. I mean, I don't think we foresee that necessarily, but it is a risk factor. David? David, this is Rob. I just want to, for the benefit of the new trustees, I just want to emphasize just a few things real quickly. I'm going to go off script. First, I want to commend you and your team, Andy and others, for the work that you're doing. Our two largest drivers of growth in our operating expenses are basically uncontrollable: our health care costs and our state-mandated pension fund contribution. They drive our costs beyond what we can control. And I want to point out to the trustees that we are doing many, many things to control the health care costs, including increasing co-pays, increasing the management plan, changing the benefits to the employees, doing everything a private industry would do to try to control those costs. But health care costs around the country are an unpredictable increase, and it's something that is frightening to see an 8% increase, which I know you worked very hard to attain, but that could be any number next year. The second number of the pension costs, just this year, almost half of our tuition increase came from a state-mandated increase of nearly $15 million in a pension fund bill, if you will. And that is totally out of our control. And this is something where, with a flat appropriation from the state and these kind of increases in the pension fund allocation, the lines aren't crossing, they're getting further apart. And it's going to take action on the part of the community, the Penn State community, and this Board of Trustees to try to get the state to understand what they're doing to the tuition pressure at this university. We've got to figure this out, and this is something, if I'm continue my role on the Finance Committee, I want to work with you and others to try to solve these problems, not just kick the can. Absolutely, Rob. I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it deserves to be pointed out that Dr. Barron, along with Zach Moore, really does, I think, a tireless job of explaining to the legislators when we go down for the appropriation hearings and when we put forward our appropriation requests, explaining exactly what the impact of those retirement rate increases is on the university. And, you know, we certainly do need to have an appreciation there
and also I think to work more proactively with them on resolution to those issues because of the imposition on the university's budget and on the costs and affordability to our students and their families is dramatic, obviously.
Thank you, David. Mr. Chairman, this completes our report from the Committee on Finance, Business, and Capital Planning. Thank you.
Okay. And I'd just like to weigh in as David asked the trustees to think about option A or B. One variable that they didn't mention that we might want to think about, if you believe, two things. If you believe interest rates are at attractive rates, when you can lock in rates today for 25 or 30 years, and if you have the capacity to borrow, that could weigh in on your decision on which one you would want to go to for A or B. Rob?
Chairman Lupert, that's exactly correct. There's another factor. Construction costs haven't yet seen true inflation, and we're at an opportunity where if we accelerate the catch-up, we may be able to buy the work cheaper and finance it cheaper than we will be in 5, 10, or any time in our near future.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Rob has reported on his committee's consideration of action items, all of which carry the committee's recommendation for approval. The board's received information on these items in their agenda material in advance of today's meeting. I'm going to call for a vote on each item, Rob, if I can, each one. Starting with the 2 items contained in the consent agenda, we will take a moment to review those items on the screen. May I have a motion for approval? Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. FBCP Agenda Item 2, the proposed renaming of Penn State Worthington Scranton to Penn State Scranton is now on the screen. May I have a motion for approval? Second? Discussion? All in those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, the proposed naming of the Natural Resources Learning Center. Motion for approval? So moved. Second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, naming of the library at Penn State Hazleton. Any motion for approval? So moved. Second? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now displayed is agenda item number 5, the proposed appointment of an architect for Petit Library renovations and the courtyard infill. It's up on the screen. So moved. Any second? Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, consideration of the proposed operating budget. Please take a moment to review. Can I have a motion for approval? So moved. Second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 7 is proposed tuition and fees effective with this fall semester 2017. Can I have a motion for approval? So moved. Second? Any discussion?
Chairman?
Question? Rob?
Yes, just a few comments. In reviewing the materials, I continue to be concerned about the fact that our tuition rates for in-state students are more than 14% higher than any of our Big Ten counterparts. I attribute a significant portion of that to a failure of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to support this university. We are the biggest economic driver in the state. We generate nearly $20 billion of revenue to this state as a result of our efforts. Our appropriations are flat, and they've been flat. And whatever we're doing, we're not doing well enough. And having lived in this state for 47 years, I do not anticipate that the legislature will do anything. We need to change what we're doing. We have 350,000 alumni living in this state. We need to call upon those alumni to have our Commonwealth recognize the value that we bring. The best dollar that the state can invest is in this university, and it's not doing it. I think I said this same thing last year. I was frustrated last year. I'm still frustrated by the lack of the state's acknowledgement of the value of this university and the value of the dollars invested in this university. Having said all of that, I think we need to be looking at alternatives because we cannot rely further on the legislature. I think we need to revisit how we calculate tuition. We need to revisit how we calculate tuition based on where a person lives or originates. We need to look at opportunities to make this an education from this university more affordable, perhaps by changing the tuition structure at those Commonwealth campuses that are not full. Perhaps taking advantage of the incredible value that the name and a Penn State degree brings by attracting and charging students who do not reside in the Pennsylvania their fair share. Finally, I think we, along with every higher educational institution in this country, need to look inward. I've read study after study after study that suggests that one glaring problem in universities is an ever-increasing costs for administration. Studies in Inside Higher Education and every higher education magazine out there suggest that if colleges and universities would look inward, I hate to use consultants, but perhaps a consultant would review to determine if, in fact, we can make cost-cutting measures internally. I think if we took all of those steps and approached the state in a different fashion, with a different voice, in a different manner, perhaps we would find some success. So while I appreciate all of the efforts, and I understand, as Rob Fenza said, a lot of these costs are uncontrollable. They're completely outside of our control. I think we have to try something different, because we cannot continue to add burden to the backs of those in Pennsylvania, many of whom are first-generation college students. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Where?
Me.
Oh, I apologize. Ted?
I just want to add to Rob's comments. I've advocated for 4 years now that we look at a different structure, which is a good phrase that he used, in terms of how we look at tuition. But I'd also point out that the things that were presented to us today, we just went through an excellent presentation on a capital plan and a proposed increase for this year. If you add those numbers up, you assume we're going to increase this year, next year, and so forth, and you add the capital plan, we're already one of the most expensive but best publics in the country. But 5 years from now, we just projected we'll be 30% higher than we are today. That's unacceptable.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'm sorry? A roll call vote? Okay.
Brown? Capretto? Casey? Cotner? Dambly? Dandria? Detweiler? Dietrich? Duran? Dunn?
Yes, with concerns.
Fenza?
Aye.
Goldstein? Hahn?
Aye.
Parkster?
Aye.
Hartzler?
Aye.
Hochel?
Aye.
Hoffman?
Aye.
Jubileer?
Aye.
Kleppinger?
Aye.
Hubert?
Aye.
Lebrano?
No.
Osser? McCumby? Oldsey?
Aye.
Paterno?
No.
Pope? Cox? Rakowitz? Redding? Schneider? Schuyler? Steele? Tribeck?
No.
Weinstein?
No.
Motion carries. Agenda item 8 is now projecting, which is the appointment of design build team for wastewater treatment plant upgrade. May I have a motion for approval? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 9 now showing is the reauthorization to expend funds and final plan revision approval for West Campus steep plant modifications on the screen. Motion for approval? So moved. Second. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, projected, which is a proposed final plan approval for an authorization to expend funds for Panzer Stadium bleacher seating and enhancements. Motion for approval? Second? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Final item is the proposed acquisition of the Rideau property in Abington Township. It's on the screen for review. May I have a motion for approval? So moved. Second? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry. Oh,
Mr. Chairman?
Elliot?
Yeah. Please let the record state that though I very much understand and deeply respect the needs of our phenomenally successful and growing Abington campus, in my professional appraiser's opinion, our Board of Trustees should be aware by this vote that Penn State may be expending an additional $1 million to $1.5 million, potentially 25% to 33% in excess of the subject property's fair market value. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Any other discussion? Ted?
I was not in the meeting where Elliot reviewed what he just discussed, but I've talked to him about it, and I think this is a great example of where we should take better advantage of the expertise of the people on the board. Like Elliot, I think with some advanced notice or work or whatever the right words are, that Elliot could have helped save us $1 million. By the way, it's an appropriate discussion following a tuition increase discussion to reduce that increase by a little bit if we just saved $1 million. So it's too late to do anything about it. I'm going to vote in favor of it. But I think we have a learning about how that's done. Thank you.
Sure, I'll go off.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I'm sorry, opposed, Alice? Anyone else? Mr. Jubileer? 3 noes. Okay. Motion carries. And Elliot. Okay, we're done with finance. Let's move on. David Hahn will provide a report on the Committee of Governance and Long-Range Planning. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met yesterday with a quorum present. We had one action item before us. By unanimous vote, the committee recommends the proposed appointment of Mr. Robert Bowman to the Board of Directors of the Penn State Health Milton S. Hershey Medical Center, as noted in item 7E2 of today's agenda. Next, the committee discussed the process of review for those individuals eligible for the status of emeritus trustee. An ad hoc committee will be formed for this review once any committee membership changes have been determined. The committee then discussed the trustee retreat for 2018. Again, an ad hoc committee will be formed to plan this retreat once any committee membership changes have been completed. The committee did discuss several questions with regards to the retreat, such as whether it should be again be held at University Park or if another site should be considered. Staff has been asked to put together a survey to be sent to the entire board addressing these questions. Associate General Counsel Frank Guadagnino then led the committee through discussions of proposed amendments to the charter and bylaws regarding reimbursement of travel expenses and indemnification, as well as a discussion on the Pennsylvania Auditor General's recent report. Both of these topics generated a robust discussion. The committee deferred any action on both of these items. With regards to the Auditor General report, the committee recognized and thanked Associate General Counsel Guadagnino and his team for all of their hard work in preparing the university response, as well as responding to the many requests for information that were significant both for the volume of data as well as the short turnaround time in which it was requested. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, David. David, you're bringing before one motion for approval. Can we get that on the screen, please? Now projecting appointment of a director of Penn State Health Milton Hershey Medical Center. May I have a motion for approval? I'm sorry. I can't read that. I'm sorry. It is standing.
There's an item that the,
sorry, I have
there's an item that the committee considered at the last meeting that comes before the board this meeting. It's the resolution being shown.
So the the agenda item number 1 before you are changes to the bylaws and to the standing orders that were discussed at the last Governance and Long Range Planning Committee meeting. It's detailed in Appendix 5 in the materials available on Board Effect.
I had it out of sequence. So.
Yes, sir.
So may I have a motion for approval? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please indicate by saying aye. All in favor? Opposed? Rob Tribeck voted no. Motion carries. Now on the screen is item number 2, appointment of Director of Penn State Health Milton S. Hershey Medical Center. May I have a motion for approval? Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now I'd like to turn the committee over to Rick D'Andrea, Chairman of Legal and Compliance, and he'll give his report. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee met yesterday with a quorum present and addressed one action item. The committee unanimously decided to recommend that the full board approve the annual resolution that authorizes the university to renew or apply for various liquor licenses and permits that have already been approved by the board. So this is the annual resolution for the redo of permits and licenses that we've dealt with previously. In addition, the committee voted to recommend that the full board approve a proposal to obtain a wine bottle sales license for the Nittany Lion Inn. In 2016, the Pennsylvania legislature adopted Act 39, allowing licensed restaurants the opportunity to sell unopened bottles of wine. Such an addition to the inn's existing license would permit unopened bottles of wine to be purchased in the dining room at the inn, at the cashier station, at the price listed on the wine menu. This is not intended to be a large revenue generator. There will be no retail shop. The Nittany Lion Inn's wine list includes many special order wines. The wine list has been recognized by publications such as the Wine Spectator. The expanded wine license will allow the inn to provide basically an additional service to its guests. Reege Becker then provided an update on the university's compliance training program. He also discussed the continued refinement of the various compliance courses to improve efficiency and reduce total training hours. Bob Boland, the university's new athletics integrity officer, joined us yesterday and discussed his background and vision for the athletics integrity program. The committee also had a generative discussion regarding the university's program for managing the review, revision, and retirement of university policies. Steve Dunham finally provided a review and discussion of current legal issues in privileged executive session. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Rick. Rick's reported on one action item for the full board approval, which carries the committee's recommendation, which is the annual application renewals and filings required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, including the addition for Act 39 wine bottle sales to the Nittany Lion Inn license. We will take a moment to review this, which is covered on 2 slides that will be projected. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll now turn it over to David Kleppinger, who will report on outreach, development, and community relations. David?
Thank you, Chairman Liebert. I'm pinch hitting today for our chair, Ryan McCumbee, who, as we know, seldom misses committee or board meetings. He's missing this meeting today for good cause. He is in Virginia Beach being honored along with all of our other Navy SEALs in a significant ceremony. So I'd like to thank Ryan for his service to our country and protecting it. The committee met yesterday and we welcomed new member Steve Wagman, the new president of the Penn State Alumni Association, and also Jean Marie Jacob, the new chair of the University Staff Advisory Council. We had a full slate of updates, discussions, and presentations, beginning with Tracy Houston, our interim vice president for outreach, who provided information on the impact, breadth, and reach of Penn State's outreach programming portfolio, which is significant. This overview included data and content about WPSU-FM, both the television and digital components, Shavers Creek Environmental Center, other conferences and institutes, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which is designed to make Penn State our university for life, the Justice and Safety Institute, the Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program, which assisted over 179 businesses last year, the Small Business Development Center, which helped create 32 new businesses, and the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia Urban Centers. These programs developed economic impact approaching $30 million in just that year. Paul Clifford then reported and provided us an overview of the Alumni Association's affiliate group program, where we have over 300 affiliate groups that extend Penn State experience around the world and impact every college and every campus. These are organized regionally to engage alumni around the globe and to provide a structure for alumni to connect with each other through groups geared toward personal interests rather than academic affiliations. These range from connections based on student organizations, cultural connections, and professional themes. The impact of these groups includes scholarship endowments that now exceed $10 million and thousands of events annually in a community that regularly shows the power of the Penn State network. Again, this furthers the concept of making Penn State our university for life. We also appreciated receiving a state budget update from Zach Moore. Perhaps it was a misnomer to call it an update, so Zach called it a non-update update. The uncertainty continues to reign in our state capital. Negotiations are continuing. However, there are serious concerns just for Penn State to retain its flat funding. The House is returning to session on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, and the Senate is due to return on Monday. However, currently there is no authority by the Commonwealth to spend for PSU despite the approval of a budget because there's not a spending plan to go with it. We have activated our grassroots efforts to try to impress upon the legislators and the administration the contributions that Rob Tribeck mentioned earlier and the pressure that it is placing on our tuition. Our Vice President for Development and Alumni Relations, Rich Bundy, updated the committee on final commitment and receipt totals for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2017, which marked only the third time in Penn State's history that new gift commitments exceeded the $300 million mark. Thanks in large part to the transformational gift mentioned earlier by Don Belisario to the College of Communications that now bears his name. Rich noted that there is every reason to believe this strong start gives us solid momentum as we enter the second year of our 5-year, $1.6 billion A Greater Penn State for the 21st Century Excellence campaign, which closed its first year with all 3 of the strategic imperatives tracking more than 3 months ahead of pace. We appreciate President Barron's earlier presentation about the year's fundraising accomplishments earlier this afternoon. The topic of the public comment portion of the board cycle has surfaced in several meetings, and Committee Chair McCombie established a small working group to have additional discussion and dialogue about that topic. At our meeting, with the assistance of Lawrence Lockman, a review of the current status of that discussion and possible next directions were reviewed. There was general consensus on the report that came out of that subcommittee. However, we did not have a quorum to approve those recommendations. We plan on doing so at the September meeting and then passing it to the Governance and Long Range Planning Committee. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, David. And that concludes the committee reports. This is the final time I'll address you as chairman of the board. Serving in this capacity has been one of the great honors of my time with Penn State. And I thank all of you for your part in university governance over this past year. I especially appreciate the work of Mark Damley as vice chair. He was a true partner. His commitment to Penn State is unparalleled, and he was tireless in his work to benefit our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. When I was named chair last year, I had 4 main goals. Now, as I conclude my service in this role, I'd like to briefly revisit them with you. First, my main priority was to support Eric's efforts to ensure Penn State's long-term growth and stability. I also noted my special commitment to the goal of keeping our top-notch education affordable and accessible. I'm very pleased that over this past year we've made some very positive progress, especially in Penn State, in our access and affordability measures, and the demand to Penn State also grows. Penn State applications for admission this year have again topped 125,000, and the quality of student reflects outstanding scholarship, service, and talent. Our research enterprise continues to gain strength, topping $800 million in expenditures for the last 6 years. The Middle States Commission on Higher Education fully accepted the monitoring report, and we are embarking on a new campaign that will ensure we have the financial resources to support our future growth. In May, Eric presented an update on several of the access and affordability pilot programs, which are having a positive impact on student retention and progress towards earning a degree. My second goal was to focus on committee membership, maximizing the expertise and the mix of members, and using individual strengths to benefit our university. Over the past year, we've worked to make each committee representative strong. We have also expanded opportunities for students and faculty to contribute to board committees and discussions. These voices bring a unique perspective to the table, and I'm glad they're part of the discussions that directly affect our university community. One of the most enjoyable parts of being chair has been the opportunity to interact with Penn State students and faculty. At each board meeting, we've had the pleasure of hearing from students and/or faculty members, from student athletes to scholars to student leaders to entrepreneurs and artists. The presentations have been varied and inspiring. You may recall Mary Elizabeth McCullough's presentation about Project Vive. The VoxBox technology uses a glove to give a voice to the voiceless. Last month, Project Vive vested 1,100 entries from 450 universities to win the grand prize of $100,000 in the inaugural Cisco Global Problem Solver Challenge. It's those like Mary Elizabeth that help us remember the reason that we're all here. In addition, as chair, I've had the privilege of working with the University Faculty Senate. Eric, Mark, and I greatly appreciated and enjoyed attending an art class taught by Professors Chris Staley and Steve Carpenter. Following our January retreat, many of you told me how much you learned by interacting with some of our student leaders who attended a portion of the retreat, as well as the dinner, and I hope we will continue to find those opportunities for board interactions with our student leaders who are so dedicated to this university. My third goal was to forge a strong partnership with the vice chair to achieve our goals as a board. Although Mark and I have very different management styles, I believe we are a great team, and the partnership was everything I hoped it would be. Finally, as I began my term as chair, I hope to build consensus and unify our board to enhance productivity to ensure that we meet our objectives. There's been much debate over the last year on many issues, but notably, I felt that one of our most successful sessions dealt with one of our most difficult topics, Greek life, which was prompted by a tragic death of Tim Piazza. In a special meeting held in June, our discussion on the changes of Greek life exemplified the type of cooperation and active communication that is the hallmark of a well-functioning board. Thank you for coming together and working through these differing views. In closing, I want to extend my appreciation to President Barron for his vision and his leadership. You and your team have made a great deal of progress on the annual goals set in collaboration with the board. I know we'll see more great things in the future as a result of your commitment to our institution and the students, faculty, staff, and alumni that we all serve. Again, I appreciate that all of you have put your confidence in me as chair. I look forward to working with the new board leadership and all the trustees in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you again for your support. I'll now ask Tom Poole, Secretary of the Board and Vice President of Administration, to assume the podium for the election results.
The teller's report for the position of chair and vice chair of the board. For the chair election, the number of votes cast were 33. Numbers necessary for election, 18. Trustee Capretto received 12. Trustee Dambley received 21, and there was one abstention. In the vice chair election, 34 votes were cast. 18 were necessary for election. Mr. Schuyler received 34 votes. For the position of secretary, number of votes cast 34, necessary for election 18. I received 34 votes and will be returning as your secretary. Associate secretary, assistant secretary, assistant secretary, assistant secretary, treasurer, all voted unanimously. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Tom. As my last official act as chairman, it gives me great pleasure to call the 29th chair of Penn State Board of Trustees, Mark Dambley.
Thank you, Ira, and I'd just like to once again thank Ira for his commitment and partnership in the last year and all of his years on the board, and I particularly look forward to working with Matt and Ira in the coming year as Ira and I have worked with Keith this last year. I'm humbled and honored to have been elected by my peers for this position as chair of the Board of Trustees. I want to thank each and every one of you. I pledge to lead and work tirelessly on behalf of the students with purpose, integrity, and transparency. So again, on behalf of myself, I guess, thank you very much for your confidence in me and your commitment, and thank you, Bob, for the campaign you ran. I appreciate the competition. So thank you very much. Trustee LeBron.
I'd like to share a couple of comments. I've been giving this a great deal of thought in the May meeting, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and now that we have new leadership, I think it's appropriate. President Barron, Chairman Dambley, fellow trustees, more than 5.5 years ago, in January 2012, the leaders of this body promised the Penn State community that it would thereafter operate with openness, transparency, and accountability. That promise remains largely unfulfilled, and as we today chose new leadership, I hope the new leadership will embark in that direction. But I believe the board remains secretive, sometimes purposely, and unaccountable. The board's self-appointed majority often acts in its own interests, ignoring the will of our alumni. Consequently, the board is divided, and more significantly, the alumni remain divided. Now, my remarks are often characterized by the majority as intemperate, possibly because sometimes, well, my remarks are intemperate. But intemperate, perhaps, but always honest. Nonetheless, I've been here since this board acquiesced to guilt in mid-2012, and I have observed the extraordinarily expensive actions it has taken to pay for its self-imposed guilt. Those costs come home to cause us some consternation with our budgeting. I will cite just 2 of the many examples where board majority has acted knowingly to ignore the will of the university's vast alumni. In 2012, and by about a 10-to-1 ratio, trustees still in this room, and many now long gone, told Louis Freeh's interviewers that board membership was much too large to achieve good board governance. By 2014, the trustees chosen by the alumni were more active and sought answers to matters it deemed relevant in the boardroom. Alumni vote totals grew, though their representatives are still in the minority on this board. The majority became less comfortable, and so, notwithstanding a board already hopelessly unwieldy at 32 members, the majority proposed to increase board size, except for its initial proposal to reduce the alumni's representation on the board. We are now a cuddly 38 persons. One need not be unduly intemperate to see that majority self-interest was imposed for its own selfish purposes by adding seats it could fill without minority input. Self-interest superseded improved governance. Transparency? Interestingly, Freeh chose not to recommend a reduced board size when board size was the clearest problem suggested to him. Not too big a surprise, though. Much of what Freeh learned from interviewees never made it to the report. More disturbing is how much in the report is zero support in his investigatory notes, but that's for another day. The free report caused the destruction of the Penn State culture that I came to know and love, perhaps in perpetuity. It caused the NCAA to impose unwarranted and draconian sanctions. As one obedient to his profession, Free created the wealth transfer of tens of millions from taxpayers and student pockets into the pockets of plaintiffs' attorneys. Much remains unsaid about Free's report because of the secrecy imposed by this board. Free's destructive PSU indictment was never examined by this so-called accountable body, nor by our outsized legal department. We were told by legal counsel, don't look at the evidence, what if it's worse?
This conference
Knowing was actually
to be inactive and will be ended soon.
I called that
For the host and wish this conference to continue,
unnatural.
press any key on your telephone.
Like most such conditions in this day and age, the product of lawyerly advice. Perhaps that advice fits into our contorted legal system, but legal or not, purposeful ignorance is not moral in my book. Millions were spent to keep those documents secret from alumni of this university. Millions were spent to deny trustees the right to do their duty as they saw their duty. The majority chose to remain uninformed and use taxpayer and student funds to preclude alumni trustees from gaining knowledge. In the end, more than $1.2 million was wasted. Majority knowingly and falsely informed us we had no duty to understand the free investigation. And after the majority forbid the minority to discharge this duty, 7, myself included, pursued that duty in the courtroom and not surprisingly won the case. The majority, in response to a private letter from the 7, chose to publicly rebuke the minority for its effort to gain access to information. President Barron chose to belittle the minority's efforts publicly, calling information requests frivolous and damaging to the university. Where is seeking knowledge and truth frivolous? Majority purposely deceived the public, saying we rejected a compromise to examine the free data. Untrue, yet published anyway. Majority indiscriminately paid lawyers for legal matters related to PSU and unrelated to PSU. We even paid the NCAA's obligation to Senator Corman in a suit the NCAA lost. Majority chose not to reimburse the duly elected members of this board for its legal fees associated with our effort to seek knowledge and truth, but instead publicly and maliciously chastised and belittled our efforts. Fortunately, the three-person Commonwealth Court ruled otherwise and reminded President Barron our effort was indeed not frivolous. Majority purposefully and deceitfully informed the public that the free interviewees had been promised confidentiality. Untrue. Free interviewers explained to each interviewee that confidentiality would not be promised. The foregoing are simply not the actions of two board groups with valid differences of opinion. Generally, though, that is how the majority characterizes our differences. Differences we have, of course. The actions I just cited reflect the actions of a majority imposing its self-interest on the minority. Deception and majority self-interest are not okay. James Madison was arguably the major contributor more than 230 years ago to the design of the Constitution of this country and its voting processes. His biggest fear, mitigated somewhat by the Electoral College, was the likely propensity of the voting majority to impose its will on the minority. He called it the tyranny of the majority. I better understand his fear. The obligations of duty and loyalty of trustees are not determined by one of General Counsel's many opinions, nor are they defined by the vote of the majority of trustees. Trustee obligations are individual, and each must act according to his or her own conscience and sensibilities. This fact is well established and well understood in America and by our self-selected legal subcommittee. Yet the committee and our leadership misled us, and they attempted to mislead the court. Our lawyers in the legal subcommittee have allocated hundreds of millions of dollars for which they should be accountable. This board and management long ago abdicated their responsibilities as lawyers. The money is gone. Sadly, so too might our reputation. Obviously, all the king's horses and all the king's lawyers cannot restore the pride and culture of a Penn State destroyed by our purposeful ignorance and perpetual passivity. We do not play offense or defense. We are inert. I raise these matters again because silence is acquiescence. As I analyze our actions 5 years later, I am more troubled than ever. For 5 years, I have precisely chosen the term dysfunction to describe this board. Board size alone causes the board confusion, incompetence, disorganization, etc., that makes us dysfunctional. But dysfunction is prevalent on many not-for-profit boards. That is not the cause of our futility. The imposition of deceitful self-interest is the cause. And to be clear, the term deceitful is used to be precise. That its usage may be inflammatory and polarizing is unfortunate but true. Hundreds of thousands of alumni who care about our past and our future have been deceived and in the process disenfranchised. Remember, we will never heal without truth and reconciliation. And now, Mark and Matt, I hope, I pray that the two of you work together to help bring us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Anthony. Again, before we adjourn, I do want to say I very much look forward to working with you, Matt, in a very partnership way, as Ira and I did, and I very much look forward to it. Matt and I will be convening next week, and we'll be getting the committee assignments out post haste. And is there any other business or matters to come before the board? Hearing none, we're adjourned.